Good evening and welcome to the Norwood School Committee meeting of Wednesday, May 15th. Anne Marie Mazzola, the chair, is remote, so therefore by protocol, as the vice chair, I will be chairing this meeting. The rest of the school committee I'm already messing it up. The rest of the school committee is present in the school committee room. Could everybody who is present in the school committee room in the Savage Center stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I am going to say before we get started that we do have a packed agenda, and so we will be time boxing things. So if you were given 10 minutes, you will have 10 minutes. Please don't take offense at that, but we want to make sure that we can move through everything on our agenda, as well as get into an executive session. So this does not reflect anything other than we have a lot of very important things to cover. So I just want to put that out there first. First is approval of minutes. March 20th, March 27th, April 21st, and May 1st business meeting minutes.
Do you want to go through them one by one again, so we have attendance?
Sure.
If we could approve the March 20th business minutes, we were all there except you, Joan.
Motion to approve. Second. Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Oh, well, you got to.
Oh, that's right. We have to pull individually. Anne Marie, sorry. We're so glad you're here, Anne Marie. Anne Marie.
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
And I abstain. Okay. March 27th business meeting.
Okay, we were all at that, so I'll make a motion to approve the March 27th business minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Anne Marie.
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so it's 5-0.
April 24th, we actually did not have a business meeting. It was just executive session, so
that's right.
a typo. And then May 1st, I think Donna needs more time to get those to us, so we're going to table those.
Okay. Executive session minutes for March 20th.
So March 20th, we were all there except for you, Joan.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion for the March 20th executive session? Okay. I have to pull individually. Anne Marie.
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
And I abstain. March 27th executive session.
Yep, so March 27th, April 21st, 4th, May 1st, and May 8th, we were all there.
That's right.
So I'll motion to approve all of those together.
Okay. Do we have
Second.
a sec? Kate seconds. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anne Marie.
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, so those pass 5-0. Great. Do we have any correspondence? Okay. Moving on. Anne Marie, were you able to sign the warrants and do a warrant report, or should we table that?
We will table that.
Okay.
I'll get that back in time to get it into the packet, so that'll be for the next meeting.
Okay. Excellent. We are now at public comment. So, as a reminder, public participation for the public comment period can be accessed in two ways. In person at the meeting, you can sign up in person at the meeting. You can sign up in advance to the superintendent's office by noon the day of the meeting to pre-register, or you can sign in at the meeting, or you can call the superintendent's office at 781-762-6804 by noon on the day of the meeting to register and receive a meeting link that will be accessible for public comment only. Is there anyone here for public comment? Did anyone pre-register for public comment? Okay, seeing that we have nobody for public comment, I will declare public comment closed at 7:11, which is going to make me giggle because my kid is convinced that if you go to 7-Eleven at 7-Eleven, you get free things. So sorry.
Can they deliver?
and no, they don't deliver. I don't think that's true either. But okay, so we have Elizabeth Barrett with us to give us a mental health first aid update. So if you could please join us at the table.
And JJ, could you pull up, Liz sent us slides. I have it linked on the agenda under her name.
Only because I don't want to previously go to all the drives.
Yep.
Presentation?
It's the one linked under her name, the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. There it is. Thank you so much. So, hi everybody. Thank you for having me. I am Elizabeth Barrett. I go by Liz, but I am the Mental Health Awareness Training Program Director through the Health Department here in Norwood. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I am here to kind of give a quick update on the grant. So, oops, it should be one slide before that. Yep. So in 2021, the Health Department received the Mental Health Awareness Training Grant from SAMHSA. Is everyone familiar with SAMHSA? It's a federal administration, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. And we received this grant with the goal to provide town employees and teachers with mental health first aid, which I'll get into a little bit more in the next slide, with the hope to increase capacity to respond to the mental health needs of the Norwood community. We also are working to increase knowledge of mental health, just awareness, and increase awareness of resources that are available to residents here in Norwood. So what that kind of looks like right now is we have a social media campaign, we have poster campaigns just about some general mental health resources, as well as mental health information, mental health challenges that are disorders, just to kind of increase awareness of what's out there. And we're doing all of this with the goal to reduce the number of residents and students experiencing poor mental health. Next slide, thank you. So Mental Health First Aid is an evidence-based early intervention training course. It's offered by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. It's a really well-known training. It goes over the impact of early intervention, early and worsening signs of mental health challenges, signs of mental health crises, de-escalation techniques, and how to connect someone to care. Those are kind of the general things, but it really goes into much more than that. A couple things I like to point out. Evidence-based means, in this case, that they're researching this training to make sure that it is having the impact that it is designed to have. So mental health first aid, what that looks like is increasing mental health literacy, knowing and having an awareness, kind of a knowledge of signs and symptoms of mental health challenges, and being able to identify and connect people to appropriate professional supports as well as self-help strategies. Another piece that has been proven to be impactful from this training is increasing people's confidence to approach someone and support someone who is experiencing a mental health challenge, and reducing stigma, increasing empathy towards individuals with mental health challenges. And a kind of an interesting finding was that people who take this training end up utilizing the skills and resources to help themselves in kind of managing their own mental health. So it really is well researched. On their website, they have a ton of information about their research if anyone wanted to look into it further. But there are three main versions: adult, youth, and teen. So adult and youth are similar in that they are taught to adults, but they're focusing on recognizing signs and symptoms in adults in the adult version, or recognizing signs and symptoms in youth in the youth version. So those are kind of, I block those together in my mind. And then there's teen mental health, which is a bit of a different program. It's actually taught to high school students. And it, again, is looking at how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health, but really also bringing in a trusted adult into the situation to make sure that students are getting the care that they need, and that it's not all on the teens to be helping their peers. They're getting support from a trusted adult as well. So it's a peer program that is aimed at the high school age. That's a little different too, because you have to be approved to be a teen site, and there's some prerequisites. You have to do high school age, you have to have a certain amount, 5% of staff trained in the youth version of the mental health first aid, and you have to have safety protocols in place to support any teens or students that this training might bring up some challenging emotions for. So that's a little separate, but the adult and youth are very similar, besides who you're recognizing the signs and symptoms in. Next slide. Oh, you read my mind. All right, so that is kind of the main overview of the grant and the training that we have through the grant. This is where we are now focusing on Norwood schools. So we're right in the middle of our 5-year grant. We're in year 3, in the middle of year 3. And at this point, we have trained 100 school employees and teachers in either the adult or the youth version. So we started out with the adult version, and then we were able to transition to the youth version because it's more applicable for teachers who are working with youth. We're a little bit behind in that goal. This is a great program. One of the challenges is that it's a long training. It can be up to 7.5 hours. So we worked really hard with the schools to make sure that we could find a way to fit the training into teachers' contract hours and maintain fidelity to the training program. So that sort of was a bit of a challenge in the beginning. But 100 is great, and we have, as we'll get into, we have some plans for moving forward. So we're a little bit behind there, but we're working to catch up. We also, through this grant, are really looking at sustainability. So once this grant is over, we want to make sure that the schools, that the town have instructors that work for the schools and work for the town to be able to continue to provide this training internally once funding ends. So we're able to use the grant to pay for the training for people to become mental health first aid instructors. So far we've trained 2 school employees, but right now only 1 is currently employed. And like I said, we'll get into kind of what our next steps are. So where we're going. So we have another training next week, which is really exciting. We have funding left to continue to train additional school employees as instructors. Again, that is more complicated than it might seem because there are some, the hours we have to follow in figuring out how we can do that and have coverage is a conversation that we're often having in the meetings that we have. But we have funding to do that, so we want to make sure that we can take advantage of that funding and really build sustainability into this grant program. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say. So next school year, we have some exciting things that we're looking forward to. I believe the plan is we're still going to do 4 youth mental health first aid trainings for teachers. We usually do that in the fall. That's what we did this year. We are also implementing the teen mental health first aid programming, which I explained, in the high school. So we are working towards getting the number of high school staff that need to be trained in youth mental health first aid. We're getting towards that number, and we're going to be able to train the wellness department staff as teen instructors to be able to provide this to high school students. And then something that I'm really excited about is I would love to be able to also offer youth mental health first aid training for community members, so that we're really getting this program, this language, this knowledge in a all-encompassing way. We have the schools trained, we have town employees trained, and then we have community members trained, so that everyone has a shared language and a shared knowledge and knows of the resources that are available to our town and to our students. So that's the dream, and we have the ability to do this with this grant for the next 2.5 years. Or 2 years, I should say. Wow, it's going by fast. Next slide, please. This is, I don't know if it'll work from here, but this is a QR code for any community members that might be interested. I'm also going to be posting this on the town website as well, but you can sign up, you can get more information about mental health first aid, the youth and the adult versions, and then that will put you on a list that I can be communicating with you about any trainings that are coming up if anyone's interested in taking the trainings if they haven't already taken it through the grant. So that's just what that is. And that's what I have for today.
Thank you. Does the committee have any comments or questions?
Just briefly, because I know you're watching the time over there. So first of all, thank you, Liz, for your work. And I just want to acknowledge you. You came in at a time of transition in the health department. And since then, there's been a lot of transition on the school side. So you have worked with a number of people in a number of capacities, and you have helped keep us on target and remind us that this is important. So I thank you for that. And just as a reminder, or maybe a first point of info for the committee, in the packet I did add stuff from 2021. In 2021, Segal Reese and Aubrey Seal came to Dr. Thompson and I and said, we want to do this, we need the schools, will the school be on board? And Dr. Thompson and I wrote the letter that you see in your packet that the school committee at the time approved and said yes. So that is why we're so committed and why we need to stay committed, because our partnership was, the grant was contingent on our partnership, and we don't want to lose the grant. And the grant is $125,000 per year,
Yeah.
right? And you said until September 26th.
Yes,
Right.
2026, yep.
So one thing that I know I talked about here before, but I just want to talk about it so the whole community hears, something that I brought up a lot at the Budget Balancing Committee, is the town and the health department needs to work with us to figure out how to keep this in the budget for FY27, because it's very important. And if we don't find a way to keep it sustained in our town budget, all the work we're doing now as a school system, we may not be able to continue.
Is the goal to, so within the confines of the grant now, though, how many people can we get trained? What was the number? I'm sorry if you had it there.
So
next
we
year,
had a-
we're going to train how many more teachers?
The goal was for 4 trainings of 25 teachers.
4 trainings, okay.
So the cost is actually much less now to run the trainings because we have staff trained as instructors. So previously, we had to pay an instructor to come in and do the training.
Mm-hmm.
So we could definitely get more trainings in now because we have already built in some instructors.
So Teresa, your concern about 2027 is related to the cost of the trainings beyond that if we don't get people trained up, or for like training new people on a continual basis?
Both. So although we're trying to train in-house, there are a lot of issues with that. So Lisa Bourgeois is currently our staff that is trained to run the trainings, and she's been doing a great job, but Dr. Taylor was our other one, and Dr. Taylor is no longer in the district. Liz, you just went through the
Yep.
right?
Yes.
So Liz is trying to get up and running, and then do you still have one more person in the health department that is a
Yes,
trainer?
Diana, the public health nurse, is trained as an adult.
Adult. So
instructor.
a number of us, including a lot of the principals in the room, I think all of you, went through the training in November of 22, I think it was, that we took it. And it was a great training, but it was the adult focus. And we came out of that training saying, this is great. However, we should be specializing in the youth. And then Liz had to rewrite the grant to allow us to do that. So we've been running the youth training, but we only have one trainer currently. So the town has to figure out, are they going to continue to help us identify both in the town, in the school trainers? And then, I do want to thank the union, because the union has worked with us to figure out how to get this in, because it didn't fit into our normal PD days. And we had to be creative around that. We had to be creative around sub costs, which is something we're trying to get sustainability built in a budget. And then to me, it just doesn't make sense to spend 5 years investing in this and changing some support and infrastructure in a school system if the health department and if the town is thinking this is going away in FY27. Because this is important work and we should be doing it, but why are we doing it if it's not going to continue? Is my question.
Which is a great rhetorical question
Yes.
that we can't answer right now.
No.
Any other comments or questions? No?
Just one more quick thank you. So Dr. Galligan, Mrs. Durain, and Mr. Quigley have been instrumental in helping us figure out how to get the teen mental health first aid curriculum into place for next year. And that was something students brought directly to us in a number of different venues that, hey, we would love this teen mental health first aid training. And then that can only be done in the high school, right? There's
Yes.
no elementary or middle school curriculum.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to hearing the update next year.
Thank you, Liz.
So next up, we have Mr. Riley from the Prescott. And I will just say to everybody who's watching this, because it's fantastic Wednesday night TV, we do all have the school improvement plans in our packets. We read them all beforehand. So we are not just operating on Mr. Riley's overview that he provides
So it's time
us.
for like a quiz, like a
Yeah.
take a note quiz.
I mean, yeah, if you want to, go ahead.
Yeah.
That could be a new way to engage us.
Definitely. Hi, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Brian Riley, school principal at the Prescott. I will do a brief, to stay in my 10 minutes, a brief overview of our plan that we're just finishing up. Last year, you did receive a written update from the Prescott School about kind of where we were. That's linked on the website if people are interested in reading that in the public. Reflect on kind of the past year and then talk about what the future looks like. And to set the table, we will be doing a one-year plan for 24-25 school year, which gives us the opportunity to really kind of take a step back with the strategic plan and see where the district is moving, and then craft a plan that's a little bit more comprehensive back to kind of where we were. So last year, the past 2 years, our big areas of focus were MTSS and RTI, so looking at those systems, professional learning communities and professional development, our science program implementation, and school-based communication analysis. We took a look at how we schedule at the general education scheduling, so EL, special ed, general education by grade level this school year, to try and align sort of what we were looking to do for resource support. So before, it would be that an EL teacher, for example, might be trying to spread across 3 classes, and they all teach ELA at the same time, and so it's really challenging for the gen ed teacher and the EL teacher to say, how do I get into all 3 of those classes at once? So we looked as a team and said, how can we schedule this a little bit more deliberately so that there's some efficiency in that? And that has worked out really well. We're in the process now of saying, did that work? If it didn't really work, let's make some revisions and then move forward with scheduling for our next school year. The second is PLCs, or professional learning communities, and professional development. So last year, we had a really great partnership with the Balsh with 2 teachers, EL and classroom teachers, share best practices across buildings. We had visits, tours of the buildings, common plannings together, talked about what are some strategies that you're using that may be really effective, what are some things that we're using that are really effective. And that was great to sort of really start to build that elementary community that we've really been working towards as an elementary principal team for the last number of years. We focus on community and family engagement. We had a great Windsor Gardens event a couple weeks ago. We have really been trying to get physically into that community for quite some time, and has faced significant challenges doing so. And so we were up there last month, and we had over 100 families or so in a very packed community room. We did some kind of make and take activities. We had a book swap. We had the Morrill Memorial Library signing up kids for library cards, and it was awesome. The challenge we had was we need a larger space. They don't have a larger space, and really just being able to get in there. So that's something that in the future we'll look to do again. Science program implementation has been great. We transitioned a couple years ago to STEM scopes for grades 3 through 5, which is a big shift. We also heard from the early childhood, meaning first and second grade in the elementary schools, that mystery science was really effective for them. So maintain that program. And really our focus has been now around how do we effectively implement the STEM scopes program and mystery science with having it be robust and having it work for staff. And that has also gone well. One area of note is we did see a nice increase in our science MCAS scores last year. Fingers crossed our 5th graders took it today, session 1, and Friday is session 2, so hopefully that goes well also. And a heavy lift for us last year was our school-based communication analysis. So our school council put together a Google survey that was sent out in multiple languages to all of our families around what communication was like from the school, classroom level, and the school administration to families. How do they get their information? What is it that they really value? Are we over-communicating? Are we under-communicating? Are you receiving it in your native language? And some of them, as we shared, and we've now spread this information with our PTO meetings and our staff, was very technical, right? Parents were saying, I really need this in Spanish, but it's not coming in Spanish. Easy fix. That's a technical side that we go in and, oh, yep, that box wasn't checked. We check it, and now they're like, great, it's coming home in the language I prefer. And others was the content of what we're looking for. So are parents receiving academic updates and not just classroom happenings? Do they feel like they need to know more about the content, how to help at home, or do they feel that's just enough? We dug into that with our school council and said, are we surprised at kind of what this is? And then we looked at it with staff and from a bigger picture and said, how can we put some protocols in place where it's expected? So now parents at Prescott School can expect that they are receiving communications from Parent Square, whether it's the messages or the post feature, that they're getting every other week, a comprehensive academic update, which says, here's what I'm learning in math this week and science this week, and here's some pictures maybe even of what kids are doing. So that's expected. So we don't have this variation of some teachers are 3 times a week and other teachers are once every 2 or 3 months. And we communicated that to our families from the start and said, this is what you can expect in terms of communication, and here's what you can also expect us to do in return. And then I put in that update as I did last time. Overall, the Prescott School is a great place for teaching and learning. And I think that goes from everyone from our educational aides who are in our PACS classroom and inclusion classes to our general education teachers, special education teachers, ELs, custodians. Everyone is moving in the same direction. I'll say that great things can happen and great things have happened in our school community because everyone is on the same page. It's not saying it's perfect. No place is perfect. But it's a place where I think adults are truly caring about what is happening with our kids, advocate for that, and we all work to try and make that happen. So all of what I'll talk about today is really because of the adults that work in the building, the families that partner with us, and the kids that come to school every day. So moving on to our 3 areas of focus coming up, and to highlight those for those at home. The first area is ST Math, which is going to be a new supplemental math program that we received a grant for that we're going to be putting into place next year. The second is taking steps to address chronic absenteeism, and the third is continuing our work with effective data teams. So area number 1, and you'll see the action steps there. We kicked off our ST Math by writing a grant. So next year it'll be the Callahan School, the Prescott School in year number 1, and the Willett School in year number 2. We were out at the 1-8 Foundation a couple weeks ago having a kickoff, learned about sort of what are some of the things that we can put in place to support ST Math. If you have students at the kindergarten, they're probably coming home every day talking about Gigi the Penguin and their puzzle completion and how exciting it is. Now that's coming up to a couple of schools, and so that's really exciting. And really the benefit for our school community is we had a team of teachers who looked at and heard from ST Math prior to writing the grant, and the question that I had for them is this something that's going to work for our school? We're not just going to bring in a program because it's a free program and we get money and training, but it's really a program that is going to meet a need that we have. A lot of our programs are very, very language heavy, right? So kids have to read through a question or read through a couple of passages. This takes the language out of it. So kids are working with puzzles, spatial temporal math. They're looking at how do I manipulate certain fractions, certain numbers to make it work, and it's not going to coach you through it and give you the right answer right away. So part of it is the math and part of it is the perseverance, right? So building that into students where you're going to fail a couple times and you're going to get a little ding that says, yeah, not correct, and you got to go back and do it. And when we were at the training, the adults in the room were the least patient people of all. People were like, can you just tell us how to do this? You had to do manipulations, turns, 90-degree turns, and people were like, just show us what the moves are we have to make. And they were like, yeah, this is the point. The adults also need to be patient. So that is something that, as you'll see, the funding is covered for. We've mapped out sort of the PD. It is very manageable in terms of what the PD calendar looks like, that we should be able to fit between a couple of half days that we've mapped out and a couple of staff meetings. The Willett did it this year and it's worked. And so a program that we're really excited about, and what I've done in the school improvement plan is map out our commitment to making sure that this program is successful in our school community. The second thing is chronic absenteeism. So we know that we can provide the best education for students when they're sitting in front of us. When a student is not in school, especially for more than 10% of a school year, that is a real problem. And so what we've done is tried to look at how can we support families and getting their children to school on time. So one of the things that we really value is relationships we have with our families. So how do we make it so that they're not just getting the Parent Square message, but they're possibly then getting a follow-up from a human that they have a relationship with. So if I am friends with the Smith family and the Smiths have been out for 10% of days and it hits now, maybe I call Mrs. Smith and I say, hey, let's have a conversation about this, instead of them getting a call from the admin assistant, getting the automatic Parent Square, where then we can really start to maintain this continuity of communication. Whether it works, we will see. That's why we're trying it. But it's something different. We have to do something different. We are seeing many kids who are just not consistently coming to school. That is not a Prescott School problem. That is a generation problem, but we have to do our part to try and address it. So we're hoping that this is something that works, and at the same time also celebrating for kids for improvement. So it's not just about talking to families about what they can do, but when a kid starts to come to school consistently, you see improvement in scores, you really start to call attention to the fact that they're making improvements and hope that also has an impact. And then the third and final area is around effective data teams. So one of the things that we've really worked on this year is having a data team in our school that routinely looks at our DIBELS data, our classroom data, and has conversations proactively around how we support students. we want to try and reduce the amount of students that are going to, say, a student support team or an MTSS team being considered. So we put in place 6 to 8 week interventions. We have great interventionists, great reading specialists who are able to track data. Sometimes in those conversations, we look and say, yeah, this didn't really work, and that still gives us time to change the intervention, change the adult behavior, prior to just saying to the kid, okay, let's refer them to special education, let's do some testing. It gives us the opportunity to really be a little bit more proactive. One of the new things that we don't have as an elementary team is a universal SEL behavior screener. And that's something that has come up, that if you're sort of looking at the literature out there around MTSS, there is growing sort of importance placed around the fact that probably is something that we should be looking at. Character Strong, our SEL program, has a universal screener. It is not free. I am not looking for a purchase of this, but what I think that our data team is going to do is say, how do we maybe put something in place? Maybe it's formal, maybe it's informal, but that will give us the opportunity to say, how is a kid performing from a behavioral point of view and SEL point of view at the beginning of the year? What are supports that student may need? And what if something changes? Then it becomes less anecdotal and more data-driven around looking at some of the factors that may have impacted that. It could have been age, it could be a change in the home, could have been a traumatic event that the student experienced. But what we need is a baseline for all kids, which then we can use from year to year. So again, there's no budget ask. It's just hey, let's take a look at this. They have, Character Strong has provided a number of screeners that they say, hey, these are out there. And to be honest, we haven't looked into them. And so now there's a time for a team that I think wants to do this work to dig in and do some of this work. And then secondly, really trying to continue some of the collaboration across elementary schools, which again, we've really tried to do in the past number of years, which having our Prescott data team or ILT be able to collaborate with another ILT or data team from another school. So that might look like a second staff meeting where we say, hey, let's get together and say, like, what do your meetings look like? What are some strategies that you use that you think are really successful or not successful? Or what are some new learnings that you have that you'd like to share with us? And hopefully that's a two-way street. So again, that's in there as sort of a commitment to continuing to do that. And then lastly, one of the things that is the most challenging, is because it's very time consuming, is a comprehensive data sheet. So we go in every year and make a data sheet that we use to track our students' growth, and that is a lot of work, and there's got to be a more efficient way. And so we're looking at, is there a more efficient way to do that that is user friendly? So I haven't asked anything in the budget for this, right? So that's 3 things that are good. So in my last, I took 2 minutes, 8 minutes. I can take questions. Just kidding.
Any questions from the committee?
So just to reiterate on the budget part, which I'm going to ask everyone about budget, but you probably know that about me by now. So the only budget implementation is the grant that we already approved.
Yes.
Last meeting, so
Yes.
that's perfect. The last piece that you were just talking about, one of the things Liz did not mention, but is part of the Mental Health First Aid grant, we are supposed to be implementing in the district a behavioral SEL screener in grades 1 and 5.
Great.
And we've been working with Jill Driscoll, and we've been having a hard time figuring out what that tool should be. So hearing you say that, JJ, we probably should talk more, and then we probably need to figure out how to pull some elementary people into those meetings we have with Liz, because we're behind on that in the grant, and we need to figure it out for next year. So
Great.
just to connect,
Yeah,
possibly
absolutely.
on that.
Yep.
And then you referenced some PD. And Dr. Munez, I know we're seeing your PD calendar in June, but does all the PD and Brian's plan and the other ones that we're going to see, do they align with the calendar you're going to give us?
It aligns with our strategic plan as well as maybe our SOA plan as well.
Okay.
And I think I note in there somewhere, there's from time to time places like MSAA offer kind of 1-day trainings that can be absorbed in our budget. We sent a couple of people from our data team this year to an MTSS training from MSAA, but those are costs that can be covered in our PD line in our school budget.
Okay. Great.
Any other questions?
Can I make a motion to approve?
Yes, I was just going to ask.
So motion to approve the Prescott School Improvement Plan for school year 24-25.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I just
I had one very teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Just when I look through the plan, I think it's on page 6, it just says, looking back on reflection of 22-23. I think before we post that, we just want to correct it.
The reflection, yep, 20, it should be 23, 24.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As I said, super duper minor, but before we post it.
Yep.
we just want to correct it.
I was just going to ask about the absentee follow-up strategy. You said it's for next year, but you said you've kind of started it this year, so by next year you'll be able to look at it and see what's working, sort of thing?
Yeah, what I think we've identified now with the chronic absenteeism is the students who we're going to be targeting for next year through a potential new approach to really taking a more relational model with families. And so we hit the ground running, know who the kids are who have been challenged over the past couple years, maybe even, and now looking at will this new model make a difference, or at least collect some data when we have these conversations around what the parents are reporting as to what their challenges are, and then are there places in the community where we can direct them or support them that can help get their child to school a little bit more frequently.
And I'm guessing similar to a lot of what you all do as a team, that you'll share that information.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks.
Any more discussion? Okay, so do you have to pull individually? Anne Marie,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so that passes 5-0.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Mrs. Ferreira.
I gave Brian some of my time, so I'll be sure.
I was under.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Diane Ferreira. I am the principal of the Balch Elementary School. Same thing, we're doing one-year plans this year. I'll just recap a little bit of what we've just finished up. I have the same mistake on mine, Anne Marie, so you don't have to tell me. I'll fix it. I'll change it to 23, 24. So the last 2 years, we focused on the MTSS Tiered Literacy Academy. That was a 3-year program, free, that was given by the state. Work with the Balch on many things. In our first year, we were able to create a win block, which we didn't have before, looking at schedules with them. From the win block, we actually were also able to create a block schedule in our building so that we could really work out who was teaching ELA when. We got mostly our team's common planning time all at the same time so that we could really be effective with how we're organizing the day, how the support people can work with the kids. We used to kind of schedule backwards. The teachers would give me 16 schedules, and then I would give those 16 schedules to the special ed and the EL, and we're all fighting over the same time. So I now create a schedule before they leave and give it to them, but that goes directly to special ed, and everyone knows where the open blocks are before they go. So that was a huge help with this MTSS Tiered Literacy Academy. We also, through them, were always given a consultant who worked with us. The first 2 years was a woman named Kristen Osborne, who was awesome. And this year we've been working with a different woman, Sarah. Her email says Dwayne. Her real name is longer with an L, and I can never remember it. But she's been great as well. They connected us also with the Christy Novak. The other academy was, what is her specialty? Christy Novak there. Katie Novak, UDL. So we were also able to dip into some UDL instruction and get some really good things going on at the school with UDL. So like I said, in year 1, we created the block schedule. The win blocks were added in. Year 2, we really pushed talking about small group instruction, and what does tier 2 look like, and it's tier 2 and 2A. Historically, we're used to people coming and rescuing us or coming and taking kids away who need extra support, and we've really moved around with the help of UDL, with the help of what we're doing in the school to create small groups that the teachers are responsible for, that this is part of Tier 1 curriculum. You're really looking at what supports can you do in here, what are intentional small groups that you can make, and what are some things that all kids are going to go through. So that was year 2, and this year we have then moved to smaller. Now we're focused on grade level content. So the consultant this year worked really heavily with my grade 2 team, really digging into early literacy phonics. How do we use the DIBELS? Why do you use that data? DIBELS is an early literacy testing that we do here in Norwood. It is a screener for dyslexia as well. It is now given in K through 3. So getting people to look at data, to create lesson plans, to look at small group instruction, and then down to the nitty-gritty of this is what a form is that we can all use to create our lesson plans in this area. So it's been a really great program, and we'll be finishing up this year. Our last meeting with her will be June 3rd or 4th. Stephanie West was huge with this as well. She is our ELA coordinator, and she's been with us the whole way doing this. So it's been a really good thing, and I think we've really moved the teachers' content knowledge and their comfortability and their confidence in delivering small group instruction. So I think it's been a great partnership. So that was our first goal. Secondly, we did, probably like everybody else, we threw the science curriculum in there and we were able to do that. I'm not going to repeat much, same as pretty much what Brian said. STEM scopes for grades 3 through 5 and mystery science in grades 1 and 2. One of the cool things we're doing with Elizabeth Warren in our first grade is the science notebook. So they are actually looking at information. They sometimes it's in video form, sometimes it's in kind of like a little article form. There are questions that they are asked. They have a notebook that has the old-fashioned, like, here's for the picture, here's for the words. But they are really targeted questions that are getting kids to use science vocabulary, getting to refer to the question. And they're pretty incredible. They're really doing a great job. And so my goal is next year, those kids will go to second grade, and second grade will take it, and then first we'll have it done. And so we'll move it up through the years. So she's done a good job setting them up for success in first grade. And my first grade teachers have really taken to it. So we're going to continue with the science notebooks. Student experience survey, that was through Highlander, which is now Throughline. So we did look at that. I would say that for us, the survey is a little bit overwhelming. There were a lot of questions. We have a lot of students who speak more than one language, and it was kind of just hard to really feel that this was the perfect right survey for the Balch. But from there, you're able to start to think about what questions are really important to us and what questions we would put in a more simplified form. And so that might be work in the future for us to do. What we did connect it to was, though, the CRISP strategies and say, hey, here are some areas that we can focus on. One of the things I always really, I think you can feel it when you walk into the Balch, is the connection that teachers have with kids there, the relationships that they build. There's a real strength there, and all of these things just enhance that, what I think is already in the building. And lastly, we created and implemented data teams, mostly through my reading specialist and my math inclusion specialist. So they would meet once a week. They're on opposite recess duty schedules. So week A, one of them is at recess. Week B, the other one is in, and she's meeting on her week with each grade level team. We're going over the data. We're looking at things. We're talking about what pressures are there in the small group, what do you feel is working, what's not working. And so that has been a real great addition to, it's more the consistency, I guess. We've always been looking at data. I can't say we've been consistently then use the data to move instruction or to do anything. So that's been a great thing this year. So that's briefly what we've accomplished in the last 2 years. And now we'll move on to the next 1 year. So jumping from the data teams, I want to move into, so the data teams were just grade level teams that looked at their own data. And so this next year I want to create an ILT, or an instructional learning team, where we have a more vertical look across the school at what's happening. So that is one of the goals for 24-25. Can't believe we're there. My second goal will be to create an SEL behavioral suite, I'm calling it. We're fortunate that we do have 2 full-time SACs in the building, and now with the help of the elementary behavior interventionist, who comes once a week, really want to work at creating a place in the building where kids can go when they are dysregulated, or they're really shut down, or they're having a social emotional crisis. Right now, it's like my office is a revolving door. Between me, my 2 SACs, we're always on our walkies, and we're getting called, and a lot of it is putting out fires and then trying to get kids back to class, back to their learning. And there's also been a lot of transition at the BCBA level in the district. So, when we started working, we had a couple transitions this year in my building. So it was hard to get true behavior intervention plans going and working. So just something where we can create protocols and processes in the building that we all know, the teachers all know, who am I sending, where am I sending them, and what's going to happen there. So that's a goal of what we want to do with that. And thirdly, just like Brian, create an attendance committee to develop protocols and processes for supporting families who are chronically absent. We have a lot of students who are chronically absent. Speaking to Brian's point, the great thing about the Balch is I can walk to a lot of my kids' houses or apartments. I was at an apartment yesterday. Sometimes, a student was out for 3 days, no call, nothing. I knew that she doesn't have internet on her phone right now, like it's always touch and go. So we took a walk over there. They were in school today, so it was good, those are the types of things, just as Brian said, you have to create a relationship with your families. But you also have to go do the hard things too. One of our students this year was a very successful kind of 51A filing to get her in, and she's been in beautifully since then. And we got to hear what the problem was with the mom, and so we're working still with her about, and she kind of admitted it's a me problem. In elementary school, that's pretty much what it is. But she was really open to getting help, looking for help, not just sitting back and hoping nobody would bother her about this, so it was good. But there's so many kids, having had that interruption of COVID and that at-home learning, I think it changed and shifted people's mindset about actually, I can do this from here, or they don't have to be here, kids, you just send this home. So, but those are our 3 goals for this year.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Firstly, Anne, thank you.
Yep.
You and your staff always go above and beyond, and are often trying some things that I know grow out in the district, and I appreciate that about the Bulge. For the SEL Behavioral Suite, which I love, so you have 2 full-time stacks, and right now we share that elementary behavior interventionist across the schools.
Yep.
We're not done talking about FY25 budget. We're not talking about it much tonight, but we will on June 5th. But since all of you are here, is that a position that if we can still work on getting into the budget more of, is that still a need?
Yes.
Okay, that's my first
Yes.
question. And then you mentioned the survey as like last year's work and moving forward with that survey, and Brian, you mentioned it too. I remember Dr. Wyeth last year was saying there were some really great things about the survey, and then there were some things we were struggling with. So, Dr. Muniz, are we reassessing that survey tool? And
Yeah,
if we need
I've been
something
talking to the
different?
principals all year long about reassessing what the survey looks like and if it's the right company that we want to leverage.
Okay.
And so we're going to obviously finish out the survey this year with them.
Yep.
But they know that I've been showing them other tools, and so we'll collectively make a decision. To Diana's point, it could be overwhelming. It's really
Yeah.
comprehensive, and the data doesn't come back sometimes the way we like it either. So we are reassessing that.
Okay, just glad to hear that we're reassessing, because I've heard from a few people that maybe it's not working the way we intended. And then, Joan, this may give you a little, of a trauma response, but
Great.
remember back in 2020? So it was just you and I on the committee at the time. We had the great idea of the NORD Schools Listen.
Oh, that was pre-pandemic.
That was pre-pandemic.
Yes.
So I'm only telling you, because I'm going to send you the drive, Dr. Muniz. Should you want to look at the work Joan and I started 4 years ago, perhaps it's something you look at and see if it's. We were trying to create our in-house survey at the time.
Yep.
And then ultimately went out of the house, but maybe there's something in there that would be valuable as you're assessing. So I'm just going to forward that along as a reminder if you want to take a look.
Thank you.
That was good work. Too bad the pandemic came along.
We worked hard on it.
I know.
So somebody look at it.
Yeah, somebody look at it. Any other questions for Mrs. Ferrer?
I just want to say that the SAC is a student adjustment counselor,
Yes.
right? We
Yes.
use that acronym a bunch, so for the public. Got that right. Okay, thank you so much. Sounds like a lot of great things are happening.
Would anyone like to put a vote forward?
Move to approve.
Second it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, Anne Marie, will always be first. Anne Marie? Okay, Teresa?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, so that passes 5-0. Thank you so much
you.
Thanks,
for
Diane.
updating us on the great work. Mrs. Hutchins?
Hi, Carrie Hutchins, principal at the Cleveland Elementary School. So to start, I'm going to go over some of the highlights from the previous school improvement plan. One of our big goals that we had been working on was around social emotional learning for the students. And this past year, we brought in the Character Strong curriculum across the district, but we had professional development for all of the staff, which then they brought the lessons back into the classrooms. So the teachers have been doing the lessons, but then we've also been having the common language around the building and the school during morning announcements. They are announcements that go along for every day of the week and what the students are learning, and calling out different grade levels and students that we brought into the morning announcements. And then along with that, this year we had Dr. Carolyn McCarney coming in to work with the district around trauma-informed practices and building therapeutic classrooms. So when she came in for the district professional development, then she came back into the building and worked specifically with the teachers in their classrooms. She was able to observe in the classrooms, give the teachers feedback, and then do that multiple times so she could meet with the teachers, build some plans around with them, and come back to check in to see how they were doing. She met with grade level teams as well, and then again kept coming back and checking in and adjusting and working with the teachers around those therapeutic settings in the classrooms to support all the students in the school. The goal too, while we did finish last year with Highlander, we continued this year making sure to keep working with the CRISP strategies, looking at our curriculum and implementing those different strategies within the students, and also tying it into the Character Strong curriculum and the work with Dr. McCarney. And then we've continued looking at inclusion in the school and looking at, when we're building our classes, how we are building the classrooms with our students so that the students can have more push-in support than pull-out support, and making sure that they can be in the classroom environment as much as possible. So we have been looking at that and continue to work with that, and looking at the best way to group the kids and have the kids so that we can continue with that moving forward. And then also looking at STEM scopes. We've been fully implementing STEM scopes and working with Elizabeth Warren with the staff to make sure that that's fully implemented. So then moving on to the next year, we have 2 priority areas that we're going to be looking at. So the first one is to create an environment where all students feel safe and welcome. So keeping with some of the SEL and Character Strong, but going deeper and more into it. So the first thing that we have really been working on as a staff and want to implement the first month of school is we've been looking at what the first month of school in each grade level is going to look like, how the curriculum's coming in, but how the teachers are building relationships with the students, how those structures and routines are getting put into place, so that way as they move on with the year, they built that classroom community. The students have a safe environment to be able to learn in with not only the teacher, but all the other students in the classroom as well. And then along with the Character Strong, we already started to have a common language in the building, but we want to take it a step further and have lessons in the different areas so the students know and understand what the expectations are in the cafeteria, in the bathrooms, out on the playground, and also looking at having our student council do PSA videos that we can put out to the other kids so that they can have a role in showing the students what things should look like in each of the areas. And then we are tying in with that, also looking at student absences and having a committee to look at not only student absences, but we're seeing for us, it's a lot of tardies. It's students coming in somewhere between 8 and 9:30, which at this point, if they're coming in between 8 and 9:30, then they're missing sometimes part of their whole instruction, whether it's a whole math instruction or an ELA block. A lot of students, when we're doing some of our intervention blocks, it's first thing in the morning, so some of our kids that really need those interventions are not receiving them because they're not coming to school. So really looking at working with the families, why aren't they getting in school? How can we help them? How can we support them? As everybody else has been talking about, it's a common theme that we're all seeing. But for us, it is the absenteeism, but also that tardiness and how to work with that, but also work with the families to inform them of what the kids are missing when they come in that late. Because I think a lot of them don't realize exactly what time school is starting, what it looks like, what the day looks like. So working with that. And then our second area is high quality instruction where students are actively engaged in their learning. So looking at student engagement and having professional development around that, collaborative strategies in the classroom, but having a common understanding of what student engagement is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, look for is when you go into the classroom. So as much as we talk about student engagement than actually understanding and having a common idea of what that is, what we need to look for, and what it means when students are actively engaged in the class. And along with that, critically analyzing our ELA and math curriculum and planning out the units to look at it and look for how are students actually engaged in these activities, what do we need to bring in if they're not, or even looking at, okay, normally I did this whole group, do I need to do this small group, do I need to do it in partner work, and being able to really look at the curriculum to look at how students are engaged in it. I went through that way faster than anybody else, so I so I have. If you have
Anyone
any
have
questions.
Yeah, so those the last two, the curriculum instruction strategies. So the team that are looking at that, you have you and an outside provider, and then teachers looking at collaborative strategies. So I'm assuming that that work crosses over, and that will teachers also be involved in the discussion about student engagement? Like, they seem very connected. But
Yes, yep, they'll be involved in it, and also that's hopefully what our professional development.
It's going to be a
will
district-wide professional development that all principals are involved in too.
that
so
makes sense. I was wondering
Mhm.
about that.
When we
too.
have our whole district days, that's something that we're going to be looking into, and obviously the half days will be more building context dependent, based on their SIP and based on the district strategic plan.
You did a thing on this that I
You
missed.
you missed.
Yes,
You missed it.
I missed it.
And you missed it too.
Sorry,
You told us the day before.
Well,
I work.
But it was for less so for us than it was for the district for the
yeah, we
building
have
leaders.
every school leader brought teachers, so
Yeah.
there was teachers there. The department chairs from the high school were there,
Right.
so
I appreciated the invite, but
we had
that
50
was,
participants there for
the
this
school
to get
leaders
insight.
were
yeah.
trialing it at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Did
and
you send
teachers
us
as well.
Oh, sorry. Did you send us the slides? Because if you did,
There was no slides.
there was no slides. Okay, because I know for other things they couldn't come, you sent me the slides that we talked
Yeah,
about.
this one
so
had no
for that
slides.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds great. Thanks, Carrie.
Any other questions?
Two quick questions.
Yes.
First one may be more for Dr. Munoz, but I know the SOA plan around chronic absenteeism, that's also looking at tardies as well?
Yes.
So what Carrie was just referencing, I'm sure we'll be getting a lot of data looking at those metrics.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is a focus of the
state.
outgoing Commissioner Desi.
Yeah.
So obviously, you see the pattern that they hype it up, they talk about it, and then
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll have guidance or information. I'm not gonna go as far as to say anything super helpful. but-
25% of all Massachusetts students have been chronically absent this year.
Okay. And I'm sure that going forward, as you do that data analysis, it'll be shared with the school committee. In the past, it hasn't been shared
Yeah.
frequently. I know we had like a subgroup look at it with the union with the Start Times Initiative last spring, and we looked at some data, but we never really shared that data out in a broad way, and I'm assuming that's going to change now with the SOA plan and strategic plan.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges the district probably previously had is the manpower to create all those data sets and
Yeah.
look at it. But now that we're actually working with the company to give us that platform, so it's easily accessible, and we can actually create the data charts that we want and the subgroups we want,
Perfect.
will be a lot more easier. And Joe Kidd is currently getting that up and running now, and it's been like 3 weeks going on, so we're ready for it this summer.
Okay, that's great to hear, because I think you're right. It wasn't that we didn't want to do it, it was just who was going to do it, how we were going to do it, and that's great if we have a tool. And then just really quickly on the budget, so Carrie, you mentioned that you might need some summer stipends.
So, depending on what the summer looks like and what those look like, then putting a proposal forward for.
Yeah, it's part of the summer proposal work that I had mentioned to you before, that, we've in the past spent a lot of money on summer proposal work.
Yep.
We are cutting back, but there will be some funds available for schools, but we're going to be very strategic in what we say yes to and what we say no to, just because
Okay.
we know that the budget's been a hard year.
Mhm.
But that's what Carrie's referring to when she says that.
Okay, great. And then the other budget one that was called out was funds for PD in the areas of collaborative teaching strategies. Is that in the
That was
operating
one-
fund,
was
or
the
is that
meeting-
Title
That was the
II?
one that you missed because I let you know a day before.
Say that again?
That was the one that you missed because I let you know a day before.
Yes, so that goes along with the district PD.
But for funding wise, is that Title II or is that the general fund? Do you know?
That's in the assistant superintendent PD budget, but this
Okay.
year we're going to be using a little bit of ESSER funds for that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
David, motion to approve. Kate seconded. Any more discussion? Okay, I have to poll individually. Anne Marie,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carrie.
All right. Dr. Frazek, you are up next.
It's good because I'm already starting to get the phone calls of when are you home and what are we having for dinner? I'm like,
Just eat.
Pizza.
like something. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Margo Frazek. I'm the principal of the Coakley Middle School. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about my school improvement plan. I also have a one-year plan, like everyone else. In talking about what we have accomplished in our last school improvement plan, it ties very much into the work that we're doing now. There's just sort of a lot of connection between them. So as I kind of go through the different objectives, I'll talk a little bit about how our last 2-year plan kind of has led us into this plan. For example, the first goal on our old plan was sort of doing a comprehensive review of what do we think the needs were for our students coming out of the pandemic, and how are our different programs and district-wide initiatives working with those. So our first priority area for this one is really taking a look at the major initiatives that we have already begun or are deeply in culturally relevant and sustainable pedagogy, trauma-informed instruction, co-teaching, and SEI, and really putting them into one model for CMS instruction. This year we have been working with the 1-8 Foundation to do an Applied Learning Leadership Institute that we've had a grant for. We've primarily focused on math as a pilot program, and we believe that those tenets kind of will help frame putting all of this work together. Some of the things that we will be doing to accomplish that is, along with the high school, creating professional learning communities focused on these different areas that are aligned with the ones at the high school, doing professional development around the principles of applied learning to take the knowledge that right now lives in the math department and bring it across the entire school. With the groups. And then, you know, the eventual outcome is a cumulative outline of how this model of instruction looks at the new CMS. So really, what does it look like in a classroom on the floor as students are working together, and how do all of these pieces that we've been working very hard on for 4 or 5 years now all come together to create a pedagogical and curriculum focus for CMS. Our second priority area is really focused on reading and writing, and again, that kind of comes out of one of the goals on our previous plan, which was looking at what do we think kids are going to come out with. As we've really looked at it, we know that our incoming 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade were in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd during the height of the pandemic, which is the foundations of reading. I know I had to try and teach reading to a 2nd grader. I am many things a reading teacher is not one. So we know that we're going to have some gaps and needs in that area. So working with Teresa Drummy, the department chair, we've really created a comprehensive plan, not only for this year, but starting to look for several years down the road as to what do we want to do to add more literacy pieces, to add more writing pieces across the curriculum, creating rubrics that work across the school. And while certainly a rubric in a science classroom and a rubric in an English classroom might look different, there are elements of good writing and good literacy that we want to see, as well as making sure that we're helping to improve students' reading skills across the way. That will also have a PLC connected to it that is tied to a PLC at the high school as well around literacy. And then the third one, we're really kind of looking at our overall student and staff culture. We've been using a positive behavior intervention and support model for behavior for several years, kind of slowly but surely morphing into one with more of a social justice focus. So we really want to kind of take a look at how those pieces work together, how one might serve us more than the other. And doing a lot of different methods to help promote both staff motivation, positive behaviors with students, and really find different ways for students to engage positively with school, both during and outside of school. Middle school is hard. Middle school students can be tough. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Some of y'all might be aware of that because some of y'all probably have them at your house somewhere. I mean, I've got one at my house as well. I'm aware. So really kind of focusing in on some of those issues. Our last school improvement plan really focused on Character Strong. We do have that fully embedded and in work. We are a couple of years ahead of the elementary school because we did an early adoption of that. So our next steps is really trying to look at what other resources does that provide for our teachers to use, and making sure that it's not becoming stagnant, because you do something once a week every day and the kids are like, yes, it's Character Strong Day, and the teacher's like, yes, it's Character Strong Day. So making sure that we're keeping it alive and fresh and interesting for the kiddos to do. We're going to start doing some more work on professional development around restorative justice. We do have the restorative in-school education program, the RISE program at the middle school, similar to the high school. We've seen a lot of success adding that program in. It adds just another layer of getting kids back on track. As I tell my teachers, our ultimate goal is that all kids are in class and learning. And as I tell kids, I go, coming down to the office may be fascinating for a bit, but you're not going to learn English there, or math or science, no matter who is down in that office with you. So our goal overall is getting them, how can we take whatever has happened, work with you, talk to you about it, to get you back in the classroom in a safe, comfortable environment. And how do we get to those pieces that are getting in the way of you performing to your best at the middle school? We'll, as a staff, kind of look at the work that we've done over the past few years with our matrix and PBIS, and how do we, morph and work with that to create something a little bit better. As the other school members have talked about, chronic absenteeism is just as much an issue at the middle school as it is at the elementaries. One piece is a little bit different, is kids become a bigger piece of that issue. To a certain extent, it is really hard to force your 6'2" 8th grader to go into school. It's a little bit more of a challenge than it is, your 5-year-old that you can pick up and drop. So doing some of that work, and whether it's, and so part of our piece is choosing members to be part of the district committee as we sort of develop a district-wide plan, but looking at what are some things we're doing, or is there family reach, is there family go out, much like Diane, I've spent many a time in many a kid's living room. Some come in with me, some are just so freaked out, I'm not sure what they do. But finding those different ways to help kids overcome whatever the barriers are to being in school. So kind of working on some of those pieces. And then this year, JJ was fantastic to send a few of us down to see the Ron Clark Academy, and really the work that they're doing there in terms of a house system, which will work within our team's system. I don't think I have enough time to explain all of that in my 4 minutes that I have left. But we want to send some more teachers down there. My 7th grade team in particular is really interested. They like the idea of this kind of like positive competition type model and this work, and a lot of the pieces that were happening down there. So we want to do some more exploring with that. In terms of budget considerations, that's we're looking at grant funding for that, because that's a pretty high ticket item. But there are quite a few grants out there to do that, so doing some of that work. And then one thing that I came up with, because I am lucky enough that I have students on my student council, and I had 3 fabulous ones, and it was just nice getting to talk to them sometimes. So we came up with the idea of creating a student advisory council for me, just to kind of meet with once a month and just talk about like what is happening in school, like what is the seedy underbelly of the Coakley Middle School that maybe we need to address, but what are some things that they want to see and want to do, whether it's after school clubs. We've been able to add some more and more after school clubs. One of the pieces from our last SIP was adding parents. We've had 2 or 3 parents come and run some clubs with us, which is pretty awesome. We have jiu-jitsu right now and coding club that are run by parents, which is awesome. So just having students have a little bit stronger voice, and it's really helpful for me to slow down and sit and listen to them like that as well. So I think hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview of where we've been and where we're going.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
The program that you went to study and are sending more folks to, that's still in a examination period. You're not implementing anything necessarily for this next year. You're still looking at if it would work.
Correct. Yeah, we would go down, take a look, see what pieces. There's definitely things that we know that we could bring back and
Yeah.
work and align with some of the work that we're doing here. I think some of the work with Kagan that we are also going to be looking at for next year would work with that. But yes, it's still in sort of a discovery phase
Okay.
with an idea of if we want to implement, we would start to plan that at the end of this year for the following year. With all the other things that we'll be planning for the end of this year for the following year.
Might as well.
It's not a big year. It's
What are,
fine.
what are you planning for September 25?
That's
You
the
know.
perfect time to do new things.
Nothing
Seems a
that
great
causes-
time to do new things.
It's nothing that causes me stress on a daily basis, but.
It's all good. It's all good. It's going up one way or the other. I can tell you that. So.
Any other questions about the school improvement plan?
Two quick
Yes.
things. So one, the part of involving the students more, I know you've been trying to do that, and I thank you for doing that. And I think you're aware that as Kate and I have been meeting with our Student Advisory Council at the high school and with Dr. Galligan, who we meet with them tomorrow morning again, they have consistently bringing back the feedback that when they come to the Coakley and meet with the Coakley students, that the Coakley want to meet with you and have more voice. So I'm happy to hear that connection is happening. And then on the restorative justice, I'm also happy to hear that that is in process. I know we've been trying PBIS at different levels for a while, and there's definitely strengths there, but I think there's also things that haven't been working. And it sounds like what you're describing perhaps is more developmentally appropriate for our 10 to 14-year-olds, and also taking that PD that we had this year in the district of being trauma-informed. Because there is some research out there that suggests the PBIS model is not a trauma-informed model. So it sounds like we're trying to align those as you move forward, and just wanted to recognize you for that.
And I guess I just, actually, I'm gonna hold my question.
Move to approve.
Would anyone like to second David's motion?
Second.
Okay, so David David motion to approve, Kate seconded. Any more discussion?
Just clarification, the grants
Yes.
you're seeking is for the restorative justice piece, but it is in the budget for like the co-teaching training and priority 2?
It's something that Margot has continually done, so this isn't actually a new thing for her.
So they've been doing co-teaching on PD as well, so.
Restorative justice, co-teaching, all of those trainings are all part of my current budget.
Yeah.
Current budget,
they're
so we're
part
just
of the-
carrying that
yeah.
over?
Correct.
Okay.
The grant would be more focused on being able to send teachers to go and see the Ron Clark Academy.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, poll individually, Anne Marie,
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and I am a yes, so that passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Dr. Prasik. Go ahead and feed your family. Dr. Galligan and Mrs. Doreen? Okay.
Good evening. Thank you so much to the committee for having us. We've got what should be a very brief presentation for the Norwood High School handbook for the 24-25 school year. In your packets, you all have a copy of the draft of the handbook for the 24-25 handbook, as well as a one-page summary of changes document. That's what I'll be working from. It's a little more convenient for your ease. We'll split it up. Just so you all know, these handbook changes were approved by the Norwood High School School Council on April 30th and recommended to be submitted to you all. This year, really, it's minor changes. Last year, we had some more substantial policy work and making sure we aligned with updated policies in the school committee policy manual and making sure that was reflected across the board. So really minor stuff this year, but we'll run through it. As always, we have some housekeeping updates, introductory letters, table of contents, and page numbers. That's the last thing we do to just make sure, so some of it might not make total sense right now. Minor formatting changes throughout, and please note some dates, letters, etc. get updated over the summer. So moving into the actual changes, page 10, we've removed our outdated graduation requirements. So if you recall, the school committee in 2021 approved updated graduation requirements for Norwood High School. So over the last few years, we've listed both sets because we've had students under both sets of graduation requirements. Next year will be the first year that all of our students at Norwood High School will be under the same newer set of graduation requirements. So that this shift just reflects that in writing. Number 3, on page 12, we've eliminated the terminology of standard level from course descriptions. This is no longer active. It's really an update to older language referring to leveling of courses. Over the years, we've made a concerted effort to eliminate some of the multiple levels that existed. It is a best practice, it's an equitable practice, and it allows for a more equitable experience in terms of college and career preparation and upward mobility for students in terms of accessing upper level coursework. Page 16, we've updated outdated references on summer school requirements. So this just went back to pre-COVID when all summer school was like in one spot, all in person. Now we have multiple modes of credit recovery, so this language just reflects that. And page 32, we have updated the requirements for our athletic and fine arts advisors. These are members of our student leadership cabinet as far as school council goes, and this just states that kind of clarifying what was an understood requirement but putting it into writing, that for someone to serve as the athletic advisor, they should be part of at least one athletic program in the year in which they serve, and for someone to serve as fine arts advisor, they should be enrolled in at least one fine arts course in the year in which they serve. I'll switch it over to Mrs. Doreen.
So the next section really has to do with some updated language around code of conduct. So we added the phrase, pages 35 and 36, we added the phrase up to and including, referencing potential disciplinary actions. We added some language around electronic devices. Unauthorized use of electronic devices was added to the section of code of conduct. We've seen an uptick in phone usage. We added language around any action or activity that leads to or contributes to an unsafe school environment, just to sort of be more open and allow some flexibility, but also put it all under the umbrella of creating a safe environment at school. The electronic devices to create, store, or share inappropriate content was added to the section of code of conduct as well, and that just the use of the word devices is just more encompassing. And unsafe operation of a motor vehicle on campus. We do have a section about parking, but this is just about the actual driving of the vehicles. On page 59, we updated our language around computer labs. We have fewer computer labs now with the use of one-to-one devices. So we wanted to just kind of reflect that language and keep it in place with the MIDI music lab that we have and the computer science lab. And our final change was on page 62 around the rotation of periods for next year's schedule. There's no major change there. We're still a Monday through Friday cycle, running 6 periods a day out of 7 possible periods with the 2 wind blocks and all of those things. We just wanted to provide some variation there for teachers.
I'll add one note just on the code of conduct references on page 35 and 36. Those things are all rules already. And they're typically written either somewhere else in the code of conduct, maybe more generally, but less specifically, or maybe covered in something like our parking agreement or our acceptable technology use agreement. We just wanted to list everything for clarification in the code of conduct, so when you're having conversations with students and families, it's clear.
Kids like the list.
Like.
Well, I like the list. And I like the alignment, so thank you.
At this time, we're happy to answer any questions about the handbook changes.
Questions? Yeah. Sorry. Seems really straightforward. Thank you for the work. I have my questions would be more about strategy around awareness beyond just making those things known in the language change. But that's probably more of a school improvement plan discussion, so we don't have to go into it. But my curiosity is piqued about the use of technology and if that's a wider discussion that's going on about how to tackle that problem. I don't know if there's a high level answer or if I should table this because we're going to talk about their SIP another time.
We have time.
Oh, you guys have time.
You have a whole 5
Your
minutes.
time for the discussion
You have a
on
whole 5
phones and
minutes.
technology.
Yep.
That's
You have a whole 5
Thank
minutes.
you.
Yeah, we're going to solve it too, right?
Yeah, certainly not a new discussion, but again, and not a new rule,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But just seeking clarity so that we can say, here it is, in fact, on this list of things that everybody has agreed to. Already enforced, already consistently echoed by classroom teachers and echoed in practices. But this just literally puts it in writing more clearly than it was previously put in writing.
So at the high school, it's just a matter of you're against the rules, right? Like you're breaking the rules. You need to check. You need to come into compliance, or is there a larger discussion with teachers seeing that uptick? I'm responding to you saying there's an uptick. So what I'm hearing to that is like, right? Because I can only imagine how hard to control it is, given how
15 years.
It's a 15-year uptick.
addictive.
And we have, every classroom has a cell phone holder, so the expectation for students is when they go into the room, they put their phone in the holder at the, at the front of the room, and they get it on their way out. If they're out of the room for any reason, to go to the nurse, to the bathroom, whatever, the phone is to stay in the cell phone holder. And, I think what we see more is free use time at lunch, and just trying to be more intentional around this. Kids don't always pay attention when they're taking a picture of themselves or of somebody else, what's posted in the background, and that can, kids don't always, if they see it online, they say, well, I didn't give consent to that. So, we do a lot of work around that. We also, as Margot referenced, the RISE program, we have that as well. It's a great resource. Teachers who are facilitator of that and our social worker work really well with kids to kind of dig down deep into social media use and the use of cell phones and all of those things. So we go at everything with a restorative approach first.
Good policy and procedure to have it written down, because then when somebody says, well, where is it?
Correct.
You show them the handbook and say, remember you signed off on this?
100%.
That's
Yeah, and I know that like the technology use is being linked in a lot of studies now just to the self-esteem and the social emotional health, and so I just imagine that there's just so many interconnected conversations that probably are happening with you guys and our educators, and so I'm just also I have a 5th grader who is begging, will not talk about anything else but getting a phone before he goes to middle school, and that's a whole other issue. But like it's ruining my life, honestly. Have you guys heard of dumb phones? That's what we're talking about. But anyway, no, I worry about it in terms of mental health. We didn't have to deal with that, and so it's this entirely different sort of frontier that is so scary to me as a parent. But also, I imagine what you guys deal with. It makes your job so much harder. So, I'm just thank you for sort of outlining the way that it works, because that's good to know.
Okay, any other
Soapbox
questions?
I had emailed mine to Dr. Galligan in advance, and he answered them, so we're good.
Excellent. Okay, would someone like to make a motion to approve the high school handbook?
Move to approve.
David moves to approve.
I'll second.
Teresa seconds. Any more discussion? Okay, Anne Marie,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, so that passes 5-0. Thank you. Doctor, are you both staying for the athletic trainer job description discussion?
I'm going to hop back. But
By all means. By all means.
All right.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, principals.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
We are seeking approval for a job description tonight for an athletic trainer at the Norwood High School. Just a little bit of context and background briefly. For as long as I've been there and as long as I could figure out, Norwood High School has contracted out its athletic training services. So what that means is you partner with an organization, sometimes it's a physical therapy organization or a hospital or what have you, some sort of medical provider that contracts out athletic training services to schools so that they make a certified person available when you need it. In the best case scenario, that is the same person all of the time for consistency and relationship building and communication with students, coaches, athletic director, families, all of that. And sometimes it works out like that and sometimes it doesn't. long story short, last year there was a change in our long-standing provider of that contracted service. There are fewer organizations that provide that type of service as compared to even a couple years ago, and certainly, say, 10 years ago. So we were searching for another organization to provide a similar level of service. We put that out to bid last year and received one bid, and that just tells you about how many are providing that level of service at this time. We went with that bid, and they were not able to provide a full-time, they were not able to meet the full-time demands of that service. So they ended up providing about part of it, and we individually contracted with another athletic trainer to fill in the gaps. That's not the best way to move forward, and it's certainly not sustainable. So in a budget neutral move, a relatively budget neutral move, we have requested in the budget and now are requesting the approval of a job description for an athletic trainer to make that a full-time position at Norwood High School. We've shared with you a draft, and that draft takes into account feedback that we got from multiple schools in our region and league. Our athletic director reached out and communicated with lots of different schools to get ideas on this. Other schools have this as well, and we borrowed some of that, revised some of that, and added some of our own in what you see here. So we'd be looking for approval of this, and I'm happy to answer questions to the degree that I'm able.
Any questions?
Just a quick comment on the budget perspective. So Dr. Galligan and Mr. Longley did request this as an FTE, I think, last year as well, but we weren't able to get it into the budget, even though it's budget neutral, because FY25 is the first year that we didn't have that override pledge and the cap at 5 FTEs, and this just unfortunately didn't rise to the top of priorities for the 5 FTEs, but we currently do not have that cap, so we are able to make the switch from contracted services to an FTE. But just a reminder, JJ and Matt, we do need to keep track of any FTEs that we're adding into the FY25 budget, because we're going to need to bring that back to BBC and just have that transparent conversation of the cost of benefits, which I believe is like $25,000 roughly per person. So just as the school committee knows, we are supposed to be keeping track of that.
And to that point, does the cost of this, given the insurance, is it, and apologies if I missed it, but is it pretty neutral compared to the contracted services? Is that
The salary is neutral. The benefits would be an addition.
but you're saying it was already approved?
Well,
for
it
this
doesn't
year.
need to be approved because we're not within the window of the override anymore, the override pledge. So it is up to us to approve an FTE, but we agreed with BBC that we would keep track of anything we add in for this time period so that they understand what might hit share costs as the benefit.
What I meant by approved is,
Yeah.
has it already been accounted for or assessed in terms of the budget?
It is in the budget, that's correct.
It is in the budget,
Yeah.
okay.
It is, the line has to be created to be a salary line. We had not created that salary line yet. That will be created for July 1st, so that we get the money on the correct line that should be on, but it is,
The money
is
itself
there.
is in there.
It was already planned for?
Yep.
Correct. And the money would have been the same if we had had a contracted service, a contractor who was able to meet the contracted service this year.
Dr. Manos, there's just some comments on the side of things that you had asked and John Longley had answered. I don't think they're like substantial and are going to change the job description. Is that accurate?
No, I was thinking clarification.
Clarify, okay.
What instructional positions are we not funding this year?
Computer at the
Computer at the middle school?
middle school, and then the behaviors as well as an assistant principal at the middle school.
So Joan, this is in the budget.
$55,000 to $65,000.
$60,000 is in the budget under contracted services.
I understand that.
Yep.
Plus benefits.
No, benefits don't hit our budget.
But optics in town, that's a big consideration that we always get, right?
Right, which is why we're gonna keep our
generally
list.
What comes back to us. And so I'm struggling with, I know we don't have the 5 This room just sucks your brain, doesn't it? I know we don't have the 5 FTEs limit anymore, but we also don't have the escape clause of almost a shared cost approach to special ed moving forward as well, right?
Right.
I just continue to remain concerned about adding FTEs for non-instructional purposes.
I would say Nord is probably about 15 to 20 years behind, not having a full-time athletic trainer.
We were also 15 to 20 years behind in our curriculum, which is why we had to have an override.
I understand that, but.
We are
it's-
required, oh, sorry, David, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's in contracted services. I will let you guys talk, but I was gonna move to approve. So.
You can move to approve. We can
Move to
continue the
approve.
discussion, and I'm just one person.
Great, okay.
We're,
Motion to approve the
I'll-
job description.
Second.
okay, any more discussion?
I share your concern about our overall discussion about what we're missing out on for
Uh-huh.
FY25, and that this is not an instructional, thing. But I also understand it's been in discussion for a long time, and that we are obligated in certain ways to our athletes, and it's about health and wellness, and so it's a very difficult call.
Yeah, there's no
I'm
good
in
answer.
favor because of the stage of the discussion, but it doesn't make it easier about the things you're concerned about. I too am concerned about those things.
Is this the type of thing that boosters or could fund type of thing? Could we explore that moving forward? Like, I know we have to pay the contracted services, but I guess I'm thinking about, are there grant-funded positions? I come from higher ed, where sometimes donors want to have a named position for them, right? This could be the Ernie Bach Jr. athletic trainer or something.
I mean, we're laughing, but the reality is that, like, we're looking at 26 and 27. All we've been talking about is, in terms of the next couple of years, is this very, tough decisions.
So there's different layers of conversation going on, and
Yeah.
this is why I said in budget subcommittee we had to bring it forth, because we had this conversation in budget subcommittee and it started in January, and if you look at the all ask budget we were given, this move was in there.
Yeah.
But then just with all the different transitions that have happened in our district, the FY25 budget that the school committee has seen so far did not move this from the contracted services line to a salary line. So in subcommittee said we have to make sure the full school committee understands. And then B, if we are moving it to the salary line, then it is a job description, and school committee had to approve the
Right.
job description before it was posted.
Yeah.
So that was like the impetus of how we got here. This isn't taking the place of all those other really important things that we need to talk about, and we will talk about on June 5th. It's just where in the budget does it live? And then to be transparent and to keep our promise to BBC, we are keeping a list of if we're adding any benefits. We are figuring out for FY26 and going forward how that will be determined. But that 25,000 of the budget, although I know it hits the total pot, isn't in our budget under our authority. But also, Dr. Gowden, correct me if I'm wrong, we are required by law to have an athletic trainer at certain sporting events.
Certain sports, yes.
So football and hockey,
That's correct.
right?
Yes,
So
I don't wanna, if I'm missing
But this
something
person
else,
would
it's possible, but certainly those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Serve everyone.
So part of this challenge, my understanding from talking to Mr. Longley, is with the contracted services, like we had to find somebody to be at certain events. And if we have somebody on staff, then it actually allows them to service our athletes beyond the 2 required sports.
That's correct.
Right. So my question is simply, did we, or can we explore this being funded by a boosters or something else?
So,
My short answer would be no, because he's just told us that, there's that piece, but, again, the 20-year thing. Like, this was being phased in, this started when they started bringing AEDs in. I think this conversation is starting to get bigger. Like, I'd ask that we take the vote.
Is there any more discussion?
just to respond to yours, I can go back and look, but pre-override, when we were looking at that horrible pay-to-play situation,
Yeah.
we did at that time look at what could boosters and PTOs cover. I
Right.
believe this was something that for liability reasons, we had
They
said
can't.
no, but I can double check my binder at home and tell you later.
All right. Any more discussion? Okay, Anne Marie, are you there? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
She's hiding.
So the motion on the table by David was to approve and seconded by Teresa. Anne Marie. She might have already just said yes.
Yes.
Okay, Teresa, sorry.
Yes.
Double yes.
Kate,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, so that'll pass 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr.
Thank you.
Galligan. Thanks, Cindy.
Okay, Dr. Munoz for superintendent's report.
All right, so for the superintendent report, instead of focusing on a bunch of different initiatives that are things that have happened across the district, which has been many, we're going to talk about the school improvement plan updates from the 5 schools of the Oldham, the Callahan, the LMPA, the Willett, and Norwood High School, because they had to submit their 1-year update, and because they're in the middle of their 2-year plan. So that being said, I'm not going to obviously read all these bullets line by line. You guys have the plans, you can look at them, and I'll obviously take questions afterwards. But the Oldham, I'll just go through each priority from each school and let you know what they've been doing. So the Oldham Priority 1 is all about welcoming environment and a positive, enthusiastic school. They have been doing trauma-informed instructional implementation, so they have had a consultant that's been working with all the schools, going around with the principal and looking at successful implementation practices and strategies, obviously attending the PD, and looking at Tier 1 behavioral strategies to implement as well. For the parent engagement, they have tried to utilize Parent Square in a more strategic way and be more inclusive about that. And then they are working with Ms. Mullen, who is a technology facilitator throughout the district, to create something called The Scoop, where a lot of kids, I believe they're 5th graders, they create a new segment every week and they send it out, and then it's obviously, actually has aired on local access programming as well. They are trying to do a school-wide reset routine, and so they are, to kind of complement Character Strong curriculum. Just like all other schools, there are pockets where there are still challenges, but there are some positive areas that are happening in Oldham, and so that has been the update on Priority 1. Priority 2, they have really looked into the data and try to make a lot of decisions on data-driven stuff. They have an instructional leadership team, and they've been really looking at Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and using data to really drive how they're teaching those students. They have reduced their school-based referrals of special education by 30%, and they are successful in replicating that process for math as well. So it's not just a reading process now, but they're actually using it for math as well. And they're trying to make sure that everything that they do and their strategies is data-informed. They have their ILT, who has created now a learning walk protocol. So where like Mr. Galligan does instructional rounds, they're doing learning walks, and so they're taking their school teams and walking through the classrooms and coming back and seeing how they can be more effective with instruction. Their third priority for SEL, to strengthen SEL instruction in all tiers, at the same time while using the MTSS process. There's the Character Strong program that everyone's been using in the elementary grade levels. They are having an SEL instruction and peer mentoring program. So they're thinking about the initial focus with small group instruction through the ILT, but they're also taking peer mentors to provide instruction on recess and expectations as well. They are using Google Forms now to do behavioral tracking to make sure they are actually making progress and seeing what the data shows of how they are supporting Tier 3 SEL tutoring and as other behavior challenges as well. And then they are continually refining their process. I know that was one of the goals of the principal for principal goals of making sure they're having a really strong SEL MTS process as well as instructional MTSS process as well. Moving over to the Callahan, their priority 1 is high quality instruction. So they want to increase student achievement, obviously, through instructional practices. So, but they also want to look at academic and social emotional curriculum programs. So it's not just about instruction for academics, but it's also instruction for SEL. And so you have the Character Strong program that they've been implementing. The same thing, Ms. McKierney has been walking the school, looking at behavioral challenges there and how can they put in positive behavioral support strategies. All the teachers there have engaged in the trauma-informed practice sessions that are facilitated by our consultant. And then for the literacy practices and early literacy practices, Mrs. West has been working with DESE to do an early literacy childhood grant, or early childhood literacy grant. And they've been using the DESE literacy coach to do some strategies and coaching and presentations around there to help really see how can they leverage their common planning time to model strategies and review data literacy. Priority 2 for an effective student support system, they have really been more deliberate in creating their teams to use data-driven interventions. I know I walked into one of the meetings that was one of the grade level meetings. They were talking about kids, and they had all the MTSS team there looking at students individually, seeing what the progress was, looking at multiple data points. And so it's been a really effective strategy to make sure we're slowing down the process of not jumping through or jumping over to say, hey, let's automatically refer them to certain services, but really being deliberate about how they're triangulating data to make sure that they are giving kids the proper resources before they start referring them to like an IEP or something like that. Their priority 3 is all about inclusive and cultural practices, so that they had the ELE team model for the teachers and staff, and they obviously are providing strategies. That has also been in conjunction with the ELE team district-wide that has been working with schools and modeling inclusive practices using some of the strategies that we're going to expand on next year through our cooperative learning, professional development, and also they have leveraged their PTA with some enrichment opportunities to make sure that there is more of a welcoming environment for all kids. The PTA has done some fabulous things there to obviously help support students, but help support the staff with creating some more welcoming environment items for teachers to do. And last is their CARES program. Dr. Grant is huge on the CARES program. It's right when you walk into the building. It's right there on the big board. It says CARES. And so they have their CARE cards where kids come in and drop off if they get a C or an A. I can't remember what all the letters stand for, but it's basically when they display one of the characteristics of CARES, they can come and bring a card into the principal's office, and then they are eligible for, it's more of a PBI system, eligible for some type of incentive. LMPA, so the Little Mustangs Preschool Academy. So this was written by Mr. Quigley last year, and so Ms. Noonan has now try to take that vision and try to realize it for the next year. And so this is the update that's been happening. So they wanted to have a unique identity between LMPA and the Willet. We all know that if you go to DESI's website, it's one school, but we know here it's two. And so, they're really trying to separate themselves and say, okay, well, here's the devised. They're trying to, what are their core values at the LMPA, not just at the LMPA/Willet, and how are they still, at the same time, how's Ms. Noonan still learning about the context through the eyes of the Willet principal or through the eyes of the staff, and how are they actually trying to use their resources that they already have to make sure that they are their own entity. Priority 2 is to nurture and sustain an existing school culture that's inclusive and addresses social and emotional learning. They are doing different things such as the way they celebrate their experiences. They celebrated neurodiversity to reflect student population. They are leveraging the family experience survey, which is the same thing that the Willet does, and they analyze the results for feedback. They have a whole host of transition meetings. So Ms. Noonan meets with all these families that are pre-LMPA to determine how she can advocate for them and what's the best placement for them before they even get to the school, and they learn about more about the school and then get more resources there. So that's been a huge help to making sure that families come in, they're welcomed, they're coming into the right placement and program, and they're getting the right resources that they need. Their priority 3 is that the LMPA are going to provide educators with multiple and meaningful targeted professional development learning opportunities. So they are working on the new IEP training that has happened this year. Ms. Semino has been working with all of the special education teachers to do the new IEP training. They are obviously working on behavioral management strategies. They have the trauma specialists as well, working with the LMPA staff as well to help see how they can, we have some students that just need a little bit more support than others, and so how can we put that in place with our little babies. Sometimes we send Mr. Wells down there as well to help out with that as well. He's been doing that a lot lately. Priority 4 is to just align curriculum. So this has actually been a focus of Ms. Noonan. She says that that's one thing that she wants to in the future is say how can we actually align across the pre-K curriculum, because it's not the same as it's not the MIB curriculum, but it's something that's going to be a little bit different. So that's something that we definitely have our eye on, and it's not a big school down there, so that way we might be able to squeeze it in at one point or another in the future here. But right now, there's utilizing materials that our teachers have been using, best practices. Teachers have been there for a long time, and they still use Foundations in the Hegarty curriculum, which is a high-quality curriculum. Their second step curriculum, which is the Willet and the LMPA, both had second step. The training this year, that's more the SEL side, and they are just trucking along down there. That's all I gotta say. The Willet. Their priority 1 is about equitable literacy and serving especially those students who have been historically underserved. And so they definitely have a literacy data leadership team, and they are constantly meeting. I would say they probably meet weekly about the MTSS process and making sure that the right students are getting supported, and they're quickly turning that data around to make sure they're trying to service as many students as they can. They're aligning all their curriculum to high-quality curriculum, such as Foundation Integrity, in my view. They're using research-based practices in small group settings, which has been new, I would say, to Norwood in general the past 3 or 4 years. Pre-COVID there wasn't a consistent Tier 1 small group instruction, but now there is. And if you walk into multiple elementary schools as well as the Willett, and they're using data just as well. They're using data to drive their decision making, and then they have a unique opportunity to do professional development after school because they do get out a little bit earlier, but teachers obviously are still there, and so they have a chance to use the whole staff for professional development because they're all the same grade level. They want to leverage the expertise of their community for priority 3 for equity and inclusion. So obviously they have transition meetings. They meet with all the principals for the rising first graders. They also meet with LMPA to talk about the kids that are going to be incoming. They are still using some of the CRIS strategies there, and they're taking what works for their context and trying to have more ownership and agency over that now that they've learned it. They are huge on cultural celebrations. So you got Black History Month and you got different things like that. I know that I did walk into a couple events at the Willett where they were having all the students in the cafeteria. They were celebrating Black History, and there was a couple things that were going on there that was really nice to see. They do that at the Preparation and Welcome Camp, where basically incoming students can come in and look at things and look at readiness and see what the readiness skills are. That's been a very successful program, and it's actually been very well coordinated through the administrative assistant at the Willett. And then now they have ST Math. They just finished year 1 of ST Math. There's been a lot of positives there. They love seeing Gigi. Gigi has made his way through the classrooms, and they've hugged Gigi and all that other stuff. But I think what they're really excited about is finishing the puzzles in the program, and how they are just, there's no numbers or no words. It's just spatial, like what Mr. Riley said, spatial learning. So they just got to figure out some of the puzzles, and it's just really been critical for them to have that success. Proactive social emotional skills for priority 3. So yes, they have a PBIS implementation team. They're still obviously tweaking that as they go. They have the 3 Bs they talk about: be safe, be kind, and be respectful. They are continually tweaking things through their culture of achievement team as well, and they have a safety care protocol development, but it's still in the works. We all know that protocols may work for some kids but not others, so how are you going to keep on adjusting to that? And their SEL curriculum, second step, has been implemented now. That was their PD that they learned when everyone else was learning Character Strong in the elementary grades. And at the same time, they still were able to go to the trauma-informed practices because that was a district-wide PD, so that all the teachers were there for that as well. And the last one, before I go over to the high school, is family engagement. So, they have a family engagement initiative. They had Read Across America initiative that they implemented. They do the same survey as the LMPA, the Family Experience Survey, and they analyze that data and look back at that. They actually have their literacy night tomorrow night, I believe, and they had STEM night already that happened. That was a pretty successful STEM night. And then their orientation and community building, the countdown to kindergarten, those type of events continually happen, and they're huge successes for the Willett. And now they're really trying to uplift their home to school partnership and communication. They're using the resources of DESE, and they're saying, how can we actually get things out to parents more and be. When they had the screening days a couple days ago, they actually had a resource room where parents were coming in and being able to do other things other than just having their kids get screened for the incoming kindergartners for next year. So it's work they continue to do with the partnerships of families. Norwood High School. I should just have Mr. Galligan come up here and do this, but Dr. Galligan. But I told him I'll do it for him, so we're good. Culturally responsive and trauma-informed practices. So, they still have PD around the same thing. So one of the things about the high school is that they're not changing things every year. They just take it and dive deep and keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper. So they're still using the culturally responsive and the CRIS stuff, and they're having trauma-informed pedagogy in there. That was the same training that the elementary schools had, but they had it for the middle school and high school, which is different days for different contexts. Their instruction rounds is still going strong. Where they get into classes and they have their team come back and review the data, and they look at it as a team, and they actually use it to help inform some of their DOK higher level thinking, questioning strategies that they're doing. The student engagement surveys have been really helping students progress along, but also letting teachers know where they actually stand with how students feel about school, which has been a huge focus. And I know I've seen Dr. Galligan pull out a couple of survey points and put it in his PowerPoints and with his staff, and I've seen some of his presentations as well. And you can see what they're going to focus on next year is I keep on identifying priorities within cooperative learning, because like I said, it's not just the elementary schools that are talking about the same strategies. The high school wants to do the same strategies as well. And some of the teachers have been using those strategies already this year because they've been preview to those strategies. Portrait of a Norwood graduate. That's been a huge thing at the high school, so that's what their PLCs focus on and their instructional round committee focuses on. And they continues that data to say, are we actually creating well-rounded students that are collaborators, creators, and communicators, and critical thinkers, and problem solvers, and citizens, all the things, right? And so, again, one of the things about the high school is that their priorities tie in through with each other. They're not just separate priorities that just live off by themselves, but they actually intertwine, so one weaves into another. The career preparation expansion, so they have 2 new innovation pathways in business and finance, but they're in their 5th year of successful implementation of one of their other career pathways in the healthcare field. So with the expansion of that, giving more students opportunities to do more different things, which I think is a great thing, and then the work-based learning and internship opportunities, consistent increases in the enrollment and work-based learning. So the more this happens in the high school, the more students are actually getting involved, and so we want to keep that number increasing. And last but not least, their first year academy. They want to launch it, and so next year is going to be all about that. So they've been meeting as a team already. It's going to be a huge planning session for them a year ahead. It's going to have to look at scheduling prioritization, and then they're also going to look at how they're going to handle some of the behavioral challenges or some of the challenges that come up between students using restorative practices. So it actually will align nicely with the middle school, wanting to go that way. So that way it will be just more of a one day 5 through 12 type of practice versus, just coming to high school and learning a whole new way of how to deal with emotions and support for students. And so that is the update for the high school.
Any questions?
In instructional rounds, how often does each teacher get observed in a year?
Well, that's a question.
During the instructional rounds process, how often do they get observed?
Yeah, or does not everyone?
There's 4 sessions
Is
a
it
year, right? We do
rotated?
4 rounds a year.
So we do 4. We do it quarterly, and each time there are about 20 classrooms observed. There is, I suppose, a chance that your classroom does not get touched through the instructional rounds process during the year because of the periods it may meet and the mixture of classes on that day or what have you. Pretty good chance everyone was hit.
So, okay, so pretty good chance everyone was hit, and probably you're saying if you didn't get to that person, then that class, then they get prioritized at another time.
No, because it's not about any individual teacher or individual
It's a
classroom.
schedule.
It's about the collective results and trends. So you're seeing 20 classes at the time, and that should show you a trend of what's going on in the school at that time. It doesn't matter if it's my class or his class or your
Interesting.
class.
Okay. So it's not necessarily, is there a component that has to do with instructional approach? That's not necessarily, it's not that's the only thing you're looking at.
At the high school, we looked at higher order thinking skills. So we looked at exposure to and achievement in higher order thinking skills. So we looked primarily at what students are doing and the student learning tasks. Certainly there's an instructional component to that, but it's not about that the data is disaggregated and pulled apart and such that it is not about any one teacher or group of teachers, anything like that. It's about these are the trends of Norwood High School.
So you notice the trends and then you address issues and then it comes back through the PD.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you do it again and tweak it and do it again.
Okay.
It's very cyclical.
I think the thing about instructional rounds that's a benefit is that you can walk in and see a teacher teach the absolute best lesson possible, and the students can not be
Yeah.
engaged and do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And then you can see a teacher
Have an
come in
off-
and not say anything, and the students are highly engaged doing whatever task they're doing, which is why instructional rounds obviously lends you to looking at the student task, because the student task will inform you of how the instruction went or how students are engaging with the materials, and then to Dr. Galligan's point, the complexity of the task. So are they just recalling, writing a couple things down, memorizing, or are they actually engaging in some analyzation or some synthesizing? So that's why we say that, yes, it's important what the teacher's teaching, but how it transitions to the student is very crucial for us, and so we want to make sure that we're looking at the student task to inform how we're making those decisions to support teachers moving forward.
That makes sense. I learned something there. Thanks. How it works.
I'm glad Kate asked about that, and can I just put something on the table for Dr. Munoz for you to think about, and then maybe talk with Mr. Luff about how the report could come back to us. So, instructional rounds we've been doing for 2 school years.
We started it in the 1920 school year.
right before COVID, and then we paused. So the high school.
Pause for the year after when you couldn't even walk in another person's
Yeah,
classroom.
yeah. So you led it, Dr. Galligan, and I know that was part of like the NEASC work and the Portrait of the Grad. I remember all that. And then we rolled it out at some of the elementaries last year, and then everyone else this year. We were supposed to get a report on it. It was tied very much to Dr. Thompson's goals, and obviously we paused and waited and will not be doing those goals. But I do think this is an area that we should still get a report on at some point, because we were expecting that report.
Yeah, we can definitely look at that for next year. I can tell you myself, I'm a faculty member at the Harvard Graduate School of Education for Instructional Rounds. So I work with Liz City, who's the author of Instructional Rounds, and I'm on that team. So and Dr. Gallagher knows that because I brought Liz City to his school, and he was able to talk to her and ask her a bunch of questions.
I'm a fanboy.
Yeah, so he was able to geek out a little bit. So I think that one of the things that we need to make sure we're aware of is making sure we're collaborating across the district on how to actually conduct instructional rounds, because everyone has their own version of it, right?
Right.
And so I think where Dr. Gallagher's read the book from front to end, and so he implements it very well. Like, we haven't actually stopped as a district and said, okay, how are we going to support principals and how to implement it, just instead of just telling them implement it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been the challenge a little bit that I saw this year, is that it was a little inconsistent, but everyone got data from it. And so I think the other challenge that I've seen with it that Dr. Gallagher is continually working on is the now what.
Yeah.
We got this data. Now what? How do we change things to move for the next when we come in next quarter?
Yeah.
And I've been asking him about those questions. Hey, have you been doing this? Have you been doing that? So him and I have been going back in dialogue with that, because I think that's been the challenge of instructional rounds in general, is that it's a great process and you get all this data, but then how do you actually change practice in the classroom to actually move instruction?
Yeah.
And so that's something we'll continue to work on. The benefit that he actually does in his rounds is he rotates teachers, so it's not the same teachers doing rounds, and sometimes the benefit of that is having teachers watch other teachers teach.
Yeah.
And you may see bad practices, you may see good practices, but it helps teachers increase their own capacity around teaching as well.
And
So
that was.
I'm gonna bring us back, because we're having a philosophical discussion now about instructional rounds. It's 9:00 and we have an hour and a half left on our agenda almost.
Yeah, it's just tied to this. So real quickly, and then I'll stop, and then we can talk more. JJ, I'll find
Yep.
you. Brian had mentioned like the cross partnership him and Diane had in the past. Is that also something we're looking at continuing, or is continuing, like teachers from different schools at the elementary level?
Well, this year we started with principals going to other schools and doing the rounds as well. So that's where we start with the principals, and so
Okay.
depending on coverages and subs out, we
Yeah.
can look at that as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We are gonna move on to the budget subcommittee update now.
Now I want to take the budget conversation in an entirely different direction, but I'll stick to my notes.
Thank you.
So in your packet, you have a brief note document from me where I then link to other documents if you want to dive deeper. But first, let me just give a quick update from town meeting. So we had town meeting on Monday, annual town meeting, or special town meeting, excuse me, we got through, and we started annual town meeting. And we voted on the school budget. I have never seen that happen, that on night one, we got through all the special and the school budget at annual. So that was great. JJ, Matt, Anne Marie, and I were there. Joe Kidd was also there, since some of the special articles were in his department. Overwhelmingly, all of our articles passed, so thank you very much to town meeting. There were a lot of questions on some of our articles in special town meeting, and I just wanted to emphasize that everything we were asking for was reimbursements. Because of some of the questions, I think that got lost. I don't think people understood that we were just asking for reimbursements that flowed to the town, and then through free cash, we needed them back. But town meeting did overwhelmingly approve our FY25 budget of $61,211,003. So, as a subcommittee, we met on May 9th, and you have access in my note document to our agenda. All the materials were reviewed. Some of the material we discussed, Mr. Wells is going to talk about in a moment, around title grants and some shelter supplemental reimbursement that we've been getting. But really the bulk of our work needs to still be focused on the lingering FY25 questions. So as everybody recalls, we had our budget hearing on March 27th. At that time, the school committee had approved the bottom line budget, said that we were going to go to town meeting, make sure we knew for sure what our budget appropriation is, and then we were going to finalize the FY25 budget. So we do have that ahead, and we don't have a lot of time to do it. I've sent out a number of times, and I'm going to request again. You can see a link to a working document of FY25 budget questions. I currently have on there 36 questions that I think are unsolved business for FY25. And we've been going through them as a subcommittee. JJ and Matt have been going through them, but there still are some decisions and analysis that we will be focused on as a subcommittee next Thursday, the 23rd. If I could just ask my colleagues, if you have additional questions that you want us to analyze, please add them to that document, because what we'll be bringing back on June 5th are those budget decisions that we need to still make within the $61.2 million. As you all know, we've also been really focused on middle school work, and we're kind of having like a subgroup of the subcommittee focused on the middle school work, because it's really hard to get that done on top of FY25 within the same meeting. So we have a meeting on Monday, the 20th, pulling together some of the elementary teams. So Brian and Diane, because they were part of Visioning before. Dr. Frazek, Dr. Galligan is joining, Jeff Kerr, Lori Semino, Dr. Muniz, Mr. Wells, myself, Anne-Marie, and just trying to take this comprehensive big picture district look, because whatever we decide for the 5 through 8, as we all know, doesn't just impact the 5 through 8, right? It impacts the whole district. So we're meeting on Monday about that. Mr. Wells, Jody Smith, Dr. Frazek and I had a brief conversation last week. As we shared before, a survey was going to go out to the teachers. I believe Ms. Smith organized the meeting today with Dr. Frazek and elementary teachers to answer some questions and get that survey out there. So we should have those survey results sometime next week. Dr. Frazek was also going to send out a survey to her staff. Again, the reason we're doing this is to get a handle on which staff will want to move, have the credentials and the licensure to move to the co-plate when it is a 5 through 8. Other work that we're focused on as a subcommittee that we'll be bringing back, there are a lot of agreements that we, per our policy and per law, need to review before July 1. So by June 12th, we will somehow, right, Mr. Wells, somehow bring to the school committee the shared cost allocation agreement. The joint facilities MOU needs to be looked at and re-signed. Rental fees decisions need to be made for FY25 by July 1st. And then since there is the transition of the extended day to the rec center, just the final report out of the revolving fund while it is still under us. So we fully know what is being transferred to the rec center over the summer. And then we will need to soon reconnect with BBC. Anne-Marie and I are currently on BBC. And we had made a commitment with our colleagues from the FinCom and Board of Selectmen that we would resume BBC work as soon as town meeting is over. Hopefully we will get a meeting on the calendar for June. As we all know, FY26 and beyond is going to be a lot of conversation and a lot of hard work. That's the budget update. Are there any questions or any guidance you would like to give us at this point?
For the joint facilities MOU, do we need to just, does it require any revisions, or is it just a renewal situation?
Before yesterday, I would have said just a renewal. However, yesterday some issues came to my attention that I can share through an executive session. I can't share here. And when I do, there are some things we may have to work on.
Can I have a different answer, please? No.
You should have asked me yesterday before 3:30.
Exactly. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Mr. Wells.
Yes. Okay. First, we have the title grants. We have 3 FY24 title grants, Title I, Title IIA, and Title III, and then we have an FY23 Title I grant that all need a vote for amendment. The FY20, we'll start with the 23 one because it's the easiest one to explain. This is a closeout of the grant, so we just need one more amendment to finalize the numbers where they are, the actual expenditures, so that we can close out the grant and file the FR1s. The Title I grant, Title IIA, and Title III for FY24 are all are amendments that were developed between Dr. Muniz and the business office in meeting and working together to look at where we were at this point in time and get those amendments put together. So we would, there are obviously changes to most lines as you start to get better acquainted with actuals and understanding where the numbers are moving forward to. So we would like to entertain a vote to approve these amendments.
Are there any questions?
Just remind me, it's highlighted the changes, or it's just embedded in the spreadsheet?
This one is just embedded, yeah. I did not move forward with the highlights, my apologies.
No, that's okay. I'm just,
It was, almost every line had a change, so it was.
yeah. Is there a way we capture it in the minutes? Just in case something happens with Google Drive and the document we're looking at today changes or disappears, that way we know for sure this is what we approved on May 15th.
Well, what we do in our spreadsheets
Yeah.
that we keep in the business office is every time an amendment comes in, we date that amendment, and we keep it as it's the new column of the amendment, and we make a new column so that we can very easily see how many amendments we've done.
Okay.
Like, for example, ESSER has probably more amendments than any of the others because it spanned over a number of years.
Yeah.
So there'll be a number of different columns that say this is the new one that we're kind of working with. So we
Okay.
memorialize it within our spreadsheets.
Okay.
I don't know how you would put this into the
Only
minutes. Yeah,
asking
it's a
because
good
obviously we
question.
have more transition coming up, and just
Yeah.
like there have been times where I've needed to go into Google Drive and said to you, here, this is what we voted on
Yeah.
this date. And I would just want to make sure I could still do that if needed
Yeah, and-
with Tim and Sean going forward.
Right, and these copies that I put into the school committee folder are not the working copies that we're actually working off. So these
Okay.
certainly are memorialized in that way as well.
Could we, again, just for like transparency and clarity going forward, could we take what is in our packet, convert it to a PDF, and have it in the packet as the PDF? That way we can say with certainty, this is what we voted
Sure.
on May 15th?
Yep.
Okay. So with that in mind, I will make a motion to approve the title grant amendments in our packet tonight.
I will second the motion.
Okay, motioned by Teresa, seconded by David. Is there any more discussion? Okay, Anne Marie?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, so that passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Wells?
I'm still up.
Yep, you're still up.
So the next one is let me click on it. I seem to have closed it for some reason. The EA shelter program, emergency assistance shelter program, is the $104 per day that we get for each of the international migrants that are enrolled in our schools. So we have filed for December 15th through March 1st, and the payment we received was $112,000. So the balance in that account now is about right around $124,000, and we would anticipate seeing probably another $100,000 coming in August. So this account's going to have a good balance in it. And one of the things we again, I say we, I'm not going to be here, but one of the things we're going to want to focus on this is making sure that there's always a possibility that those migrants that are living within Norwood right now and are attending other schools still decide that they're going to enroll within the Norwood Public Schools. So having this balance sitting there is we want to keep that there to protect against that situation, so that if we have to add busing or we have to add curriculum materials or staffing, you have a start point set of funds that you can work from. There is, there's always a good possibility. You live in this town, this is where they're located. You start to get, acclimated to the town, and they may want to have their students enrolled here. So this will give sort of that startup money to be able to take care of any surprises that might come along associated with that. This money can be spent on anything that supports the local funding source. It's designed to take some of the burden off of the local taxpayer. So, it can be spent on curriculum materials, desks. It can be spent on food if that was necessary, or clothing. But they're pretty set with those items. Transportation is the big one that people are spending a lot of this money on. So having that money there, it's a good idea to keep it there. It does look like it's still within the budget for next year coming from the state. So the anticipation is that this is going to continue as the program for next year with the same amount of money. So we should see quarterly payments again happening next year, and they're all based upon the enrollment that we currently have.
Matt, would you just explain the mechanism quickly? So this money comes directly to the schools?
Comes directly to the school. So this is, It's treated very similar to other funding sources that come directly to the schools, like Circuit Breaker or School Choice. It's been set up. We worked with the town. We've got it set up with some very general spending accounts right now that we thought might come along, like salaries, supplies. Just we made some very simple. I think we put contracted services in there too, just to have a few lines to start with, not knowing exactly. Oh, I put transportation too. I did put that in there. So the money flows directly to us. It comes into that account, and it will act like a revolving fund. So it will roll over. The money will be there. You'll be able to charge expenditures directly to it.
Okay. So it's not in our operating budget from the town. It's a revolving fund. It can carry over. As we go forth with quarterly reports, you and then Sean would report
Yes.
out like another revolving fund. And I'm just emphasizing this because sometimes things do not happen the way they're supposed to in Norwood. So in that document that you have in your packet, it very clearly says that in accordance with the language in the supplemental budget of the House Bill 3458, the funds must be deposited in a separate account and made available to the school committee without further appropriation. So that means directly to us.
Directly, yep.
I just would like that documented in minutes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Wells on this? Okay. Teresa, project management update.
Just a quick update, since it does impact the budget. So obviously the district has been under a lot of transition over the last 7 weeks. JJ and Matt, it's been 7 weeks to the day that you've agreed to step into your acting roles. So thank you very much for all of your leadership and dedication to the district, to the school committee. I know it has not been easy. The district did very quickly go from 4 to 2 leaders in our central office. And there is a lot of work on the district's plate, as everybody knows, and there is further transition with Mr. Luff coming on board as a superintendent starting July 1. So just so the community and the school district knows, Mr. Luff is going to be doing about 5 to 8 hours a week in district starting today, I believe. He was here earlier today, doing some site visits to all of our schools, starting to transition some things from Matt to him in the financial world, working with JJ on some initiatives, just transitioning him into his role. So we're grateful for Mr. Luff for doing that, and I know he's very excited to get into all of our schools. And then other projects that are very time consuming, that are a little beyond the capacity of 2, and then as a school committee, is around the middle school operations and staffing, and also the elementary study and how those 2 things are going to intersect over the summer. So we are bringing back Dana Brown, who has worked at the district before in a variety of capacities in a part-time project management role, and he will help us with the middle school project, and then at some point, probably when it is appropriate, how the elementary study intersects with that, and then he will also stay on over the summer to support Mr. Luff in that transition as well. So just wanted to acknowledge that and thank everybody for all the many moving pieces in your leadership, Matt and JJ, during this time.
Excellent. Okay. Student Opportunities Act. You are up, Dr. Nunez. Yep.
We're on time right now.
We are. You will get your allotted 15 minutes.
That's up to you guys.
You will get your allotted 15 minutes.
Oops. I don't need 15 minutes, hopefully. Okay, so the Student Opportunity Act, we're just, we obviously have talked about this in prior school committee meetings, and so the one thing we want to talk about today is the budget and how the money is actually getting spent. So this presentation has not changed any. Obviously, we've had goals that we wanted to do some family support home visits and utilize our adult English classes as a platform to help recruit to our LPAC, although we've had a lot of members sign up at the Multilingual Family Fair recently. Conduct mid and end of the year surveys for families to go ahead and let us know how we're doing, and increase classroom engagement, because as to Dr. Frazek's point, like that 6'2", 8th grade boy doesn't want to come to school, maybe because if we can get them to like school, then maybe they'll come to school and the parent doesn't have to worry about trying to pick them up and push them out of school, push them to school. So we obviously went through feedback, and we had an array of things, more like family home visits, so other stuff that they had suggested, we are embedded into our plan. But the budget implication is probably the biggest portion here that's going to be new to everybody. So we talked about the number of 112.5, 92.5, 92.5. When I'm talking to people online, it's $112,500 for year 1, $92,500 for year 2, and $92,500 for year 3. And we are not seeking to ask for additional funds, and this was not budgeted separately from for the Student Opportunity Act, but we are actually doing what we already are doing in the district and saying we're going to do this two birds with one stone, I guess you can say, or double down, or double dip, however you want to call it. So year 1 for our budget would be making sure that we have money for our family liaisons. We currently have 3 family liaisons in our district that are doing a lot of work, so we want to expand that to hopefully get maybe 1 per school, or at least close to that. And originally, we were using the 186 grant. Ms. Bourgeois was using the 186 grant to get that. We are no longer qualified for that 186 grant, so we will not have that funding this year. Although talking to DESE on Monday, we probably will get it the next year. We just missed the funding because they take the October 1 SIMS data. Because I was telling the DESE rep, I said, listen, we've had a lot of immigrants move into our school this year. And she said, yeah, we took the October 1st data, so that's why we didn't qualify. Among other things, there were probably some other criteria as well. DESE moved the bar, so we didn't get to the bar, basically, essentially. And so, but at the same time, DESE said absenteeism is a problem, and that's what we're focusing on, as you heard from the principals today. So we're going to give you a one-time $10,000 payment. So with that $10,000 payment, along with some of the Title III money that Ms. Bourgeois gets, because Title III happens to increase every single year, that we will be able to expand our family liaison support for all of our schools. This is our last year of ESSER, and we know we have to use this money. And so we are saying we're going to be able to use some ESSER for some family home visit materials, as you heard from Mr. Riley, trying to secure a place, and that could be a challenge as well. So the Windsor Gardens activity was fantastic, although they was very crowded. So how can we continue to support our schools that want to go out to places and do events like that, and do some family home visits, and make sure they have the proper support that they need to make sure that it goes off with no hitch. And that can easily come from the assistant superintendent's budget of supplies and materials. So that's why I put the same, because we have that money through ESSER, but next year, the following years, we can just use that through the assistant superintendent supply line item. We know that the principals, as you heard from Ms. Ferreira and Dr. Frazick, they do go to homes, but it'd be nice if teachers want to go to homes, how we can compensate them for that. I know Mrs. Smith would be more than happy to know that if teachers are doing stuff outside of work hours, that they're getting compensated for that. So we want to go ahead and budget some line item money from there. And we do have stipend money proposals, as you heard from Ms. Hutchins, that we have a lot of summer proposal work that we do. So we're going to repurpose some of those funds to say throughout the year or in the summer, if we're doing some family home visits and teachers want to go to homes with principals and school leaders, or do some events that Principal Riley was talking about, that we would be able to compensate them at the rate that they deserve. And so our adult English classes have been ongoing. This is not new to the district. The 186 grant paid for that, but now Ms. Bourgeois has already want to pre-budget that for our Title III funds, because we don't want to lose that. It happens at the Balch Elementary School right now. And our professional development, we're going to use our first year of ESSER funds. We're going to try to use ESSER. We're going to use ESSER funds and spend that down, but that would normally come out of the assistant superintendent's budget for professional development, because this is a district-wide initiative anyways, and it will decrease in year 2 and year 3, because some of the professional development is a one-time thing where we would have people on site trained, and they would be able to help coach and support teachers do that implementation in year 2 and year 3. So
Before you move on from year 1, just to put in different words what I think you're saying about the 186 grant and the lunacy of it. So the 186 grant is part of Title III, but it's a sub-separate part, right? It's federal funding.
it's actually a different grant.
It's a different grant, but it's like the immigration grant, right?
Yes, it's the
186. So it's the
immigrant
immigration grant, but it comes from the federal government, and then the states determine how they're going to allocate it to the
Yes.
districts, right?
Yes.
So DESE, the state that's allocating the federal money, has said to us, oh, you don't meet our criteria as of October 1.
Right.
But as of November, the same state determined that new arrivals were coming to Norwood.
And that's the only criteria that I'm speaking to now.
Right?
Ms. Bourgeois has a much more keen awareness of what happened. She said it was like 2 criteria that we didn't meet.
Yeah.
But she basically what her message to me was, DESE moved the line.
Yeah.
And the speculation is they got this funding from the federal government.
Yeah.
They don't have enough to still do the same criteria, so they had to change the criteria because they had to make sure that they were still allocating money to certain schools. And I anticipate we get about $16,000 a year from this grant.
And to be clear, I have no problem with new
Yep.
arrivals coming to Norwood. That's not what I'm
Yep.
discussing here. I'm discussing
You're
the
saying
fact that the
what-
state is
yeah.
saying you don't qualify, and then a month later, after saying you don't qualify and you're not going to get this funding, oh, by the way, here's extra students. But next year, because of these extra students, you'll now qualify.
Yeah, I was told by the DESI rep that we have to have, for that criteria, you have to have an increase of 15% of immigrants every year.
Yeah.
And I feel like we made that mark, but I didn't have that number in front of me. But I'm like, either we're at 14% or you took the data way too early, because I know we had students move in November, December, and January.
Yeah, just frustrating, just frustrating.
Very frustrating, yes.
Yeah, and then with the ESSER funding, Dr. Munoz, so that ends in September. So,
Yep.
well, you have to allocate it by January, I think. So that $80,000, we will be able to fully utilize it and allocate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because we're having our PD in August, some summer work as well, and then the election day, November 17th, or
Okay.
November, whatever the election day is in November.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that too, or that only, yeah. Year two doesn't change, it's just that the funding drops a little bit for professional development, because we already started this, we're trying to front load it with our ESSER funding. And so the money basically stays the same, and the same allocations from the same areas come out. And year three is exactly the same as well.
Has this been reviewed by Mr. Luff?
Yes.
I'm curious, why is all of the SOA funding going towards one area? So we have a low income population of 39%, an English language learner population of 14.6%.
Yep.
But I don't see any distribution of these funds.
So these funds are geared towards chronic absenteeism, which is going to hit all of our student populations. Right now, our district is at 28% of chronic absenteeism, but our Latino and multilingual learner population is upwards of 40% of chronic absenteeism.
Are we doing, but how you have explained this
Yes.
is that this is all being run out of Ms. Bourgeois' area, which is ELE.
Because we have a multilingual learner focus for the district, even though.
But are our Black and Latinx students, or our Latinx students, if that's what, are they all multilingual?
They're not, but.
So then,
But that's the reason why the school leaders have decided to say, we're going to focus on chronic absenteeism for our whole student body versus.
and I'm asking,
Yeah.
but I'm asking why
Yeah.
this plan doesn't address that. This plan seems very focused on the ELE program.
Yes, because the
And-
DESI asks you in the Student Opportunity Act to focus on one or two subgroups, and the two highest subgroups for our chronic absenteeism was the Latino population and the multilingual learner population.
But
Yeah.
where is the Latino population in this? Because I just asked if the Latino population and the multilingual learning population is the same, and you said no.
There is overlap, but it's not the same, to your point.
So I guess I'm asking, why are we, to put it in very blunt terms, why are we blowing the whole thing on one area?
Because this DESI has been asking and scaring everyone about chronic absenteeism as a measure
But
of.
this
talking
doesn't
about-
address chronic absenteeism. This addresses one particular subpopulation. And I'm asking, why aren't we doing it more broadly?
I assume that it would do more than just one.
But it
Are you talking
doesn't.
about because of the Title III funding, Joan? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about because, because who's running all of these programs? It's coming out of ELE. And I also
No.
have questions about why
We-
we're doing so many home visits.
We're not doing so many home visits.
You have
That's-
stipends in here for home visits.
Yes, got stipends because of K-12, we have 9 schools, that if they wanted to take teachers on to their home visits, we want to be able to stipend them and give them the correct funds.
Why are we asking teachers to do home visits?
We're not asking them to.
Because what the principals were talking about earlier.
Principals are different. Why are we asking teachers to do home visits?
I think it's the same reason, to develop relationships and make a bridge.
But that's a contractual issue that we need to negotiate. And there are concerns which we will discuss, which we will.
Does it say
We need to have
teachers?
executive sessions before. There are concerns around this that I think that are concerning to me. And again, as we look at the broad population of our district, who's going to be doing those home visits to where? Because what I feel like I'm hearing from you is two different answers. Yeah, it's going to focus on the Latinx population and it's going to focus on the ELE population, but there's not a whole lot of overlap there. So, or is there? But because you said no.
No, there is overlap there. There's not
But
the
how
same groups, is
much?
what I'm saying.
How
That
much?
number I don't have in front of me.
So this is what my concern is that we have, if you look at the list of people or the list of groups, right, that should be supported by the Student Opportunities Act. we have English language learners at 14%, students with disabilities at 25%, low-income students at 39%. So in those three groups, I'm wondering why there's not funding or a specific plan to address some of those other groups, going back to why are we spending the whole wad on just one group, which is actually our lowest percentage of total enrollment.
The three groups you mentioned do have huge overlap, first of all.
So tell me what that overlap is.
I just don't have that number, but I do know they have huge overlap. Yes, I hear what you're saying.
But you heard what I'm saying, because what I've heard you talk about in this is what Ms. Bourgeois' area is going to be doing, which is ELE, which is very specific to our multi-language learners, our English language learners, right? And again, and I would love to see us support adult English language classes. Love it. But again, I wonder, what's our main focus? We're in this situation where our budget is so tight that it's the same issue that I was bringing up with the athletic trainer, right? Like, yeah, it's not a big deal to do benefits, except it is a big deal to do benefits when you're literally cutting office supplies at $5,000 a pop or $10,000 a pop, so that we can try to make sure that we're not riffing people and make sure that we're making sure that our curriculum stays up to date. So that's why I'm kind of coming at this and going, well, are we getting the biggest bang for our buck in this? Not that this is not worthy, because this is worthy, but when we look at this, the school as a whole, I have concerns about spending so narrowly in a way that benefits one population only.
It looks like, sorry, some of these are broad, but some of them, in the way you were describing it, got more specific to ELE only. But
Yeah.
not all of them are ELE only, correct?
It does touch a more broader audience, which is why the principals have this in their school improvement plans. I know Tracy had your hand up. The adult English classes have always been there.
Yep.
And so we're saying, let's use that to leverage to recruit her LPAC, because that way we can start to think about how we can better support our multilingual learner families. The family liaisons, we've always had 3 in the district, but they haven't been able to be utilized at every single school because there's 3 of them for 9 schools. And so we're trying to say, how can we expand that where family liaisons can not just only reach out to our multilingual learner population, but all students who are chronically absent as well.
But again, the way it's been described is how it's coming out. So
family
So
liaison.
I've put my objections on the table. I don't need to keep badgering it, because I'll hold myself to my own policy of shutting up. So I'll table that part of the discussion, because my objections and the responses have been heard, and ask that we move to a different part of the conversation.
Can I clarify a question?
Yeah.
Are family liaisons only for multilingual families?
No.
Okay, that's good to hear.
But the
It's for-
3 that were here were hired through Ms. Bourgeois for our family engagement. And I said,
Okay.
well, let's expand the program, but I'm not going to take it away from her.
So it could be expanded, but you're still envisioning it living there.
Well, she's going to be a part of the process because she knows how the program's been running for the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
A brief step back, and then I'll boomerang us forward. So I have been badgering JJ on this topic for 6 weeks now, and he's tired of my questions, I'm sure. But just as a reminder, so right during the transition of Dr. Thompson going out on medical leave, it also rose to the awareness of everybody in the district and the school committee that this was due to the state by April 1st. So I do want to thank Dr. Munez for taking this on and trying to get us out of a really challenging situation where something was due and we had to move forward. So thank you, JJ. With that said, I've had questions all along about like what got in there and how, and we've worked through the budget in tremendous ways to figure things out. Joan, on April 10th, when I asked that we table the vote on April 10th, it was because I shared a lot of what you're saying now, like how did we get here? Why not the 25% of students with disabilities? That was our focus of our previous SOA plan. And just to remind everybody, back in our April 10th agenda is the copy of the document that has been submitted to DESE. And they're waiting for our vote. And my first question, Dr. Munez, is have we had any feedback from DESE? I understand some other districts have received feedback and requests to edits. Have we gotten anything from DESE so far?
DESE has not given us feedback yet.
Nothing from them, okay.
I
So-
actually checked this morning.
Okay, so the document that you submitted is still the document that DESE is expecting us to vote on, correct?
Yes, but I also previewed the person who runs the Student Opportunity Act for the whole state, that there's most likely going to be amendments, and I need to talk to you guys first. And so
Right.
she said, when that happens, just let us know, and we'll give you back the documents. You can make amendments.
Okay, I just want to make sure that in the 24 hours since I last talked to you about this, that nothing came back from DESE. Another really big struggle, and Joan, I think you're hitting on some of this, but it's really frustrating for me, is if you talk to Senator Rush and Representative Rogers, which Jody and I did last week, they are adamant that this SOA has been fully funded. Adamant that from their perspective, the Student Opportunities Plan has been fully funded, and we as Norwood should have enough money via Chapter 70 earmarked for SOA to fund this plan. But if you look at where Dr. Muniz and Mr. Wells have had to try to get creative in how we're going to fund it, Chapter 70 isn't up there. Not once. We are funding our required SOA plan through title money, through ESSER money. Like, we are not actually funding our SOA plan through money of Chapter 70. And that is to no one's fault here. It's just a reality of what they've put into the legislator and how money flows to the town, and then also the reality. Because if you read the law says it's supposed to be, you're supposed to show how you allocated your Chapter 70. But then if you read the guidance from DESE in this current iteration, they say, we know this was the law, but if you can't show us your chapters, like, not in these words, they say it in better words, but like, we know it's the law, but if you can't show us how you're going to allocate Chapter 70, show us what funding you are allocating. And in my discussions with JJ, it's been, what could we do to meet one of the criteria set forth from DESE, which, David, you've talked a lot about, that they've really focused on chronic absenteeism. And how can we use money that was in the budget for things that we are already going to do to support this initiative? Is that accurate, JJ?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
So I don't love where the budget is, but that's no one's fault here. It's more my frustration with the state. Like, if you told us we got Chapter 70 money, like, I'm just frustrated with the process. I do still have a lot of questions about this, but I know we also are required to have a vote. But one question I do hope you can clarify. On page 15 of the plan that was sent to DESE, it says that we are allocating as a district, give me 1 second because I just lost it, $445,000. And that's a different number than what's on here.
That's because we had revised that number, but I already submitted it, so I need to I already know I'm going to have them send it back to me so I can amend it to make it this number.
Okay, so if we vote to approve the plan, you want us to vote based on these slides tonight,
Yes.
not the number.
This will be the updated plan that I will put into the DESE system.
Okay. And then I would just request, if we do vote and approve this number tonight, if Mr. Wells, you can turn it into one of your fancy spreadsheets,
Sure.
just so we have, like, the documentation.
Absolutely. And we'll PDF it too.
Okay, great.
Don't sound too excited about that.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah?
Yes.
Joan, you just brought this up as well. So there's the plan, there's the intent, there's this is important work, and then there's just some processes that perhaps because you took it on and got it done for us, we still need to look at. So around contractual concerns, around stipends, and around a job description, is that work that is still in process, and would be reported back to us?
Yeah, I have to talk to obviously Ms. Smith about that, because she actually asked, her and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when she saw this, and she was asking how this process was going to go, so this is something that we have to actually talk about. But I do know that, obviously, we're in negotiations with all the unions right now, but there are after-school activities that teachers do with families, and I want to make sure that if and when things go to where they go to in our negotiations, that we are in a position to be able to support that.
And is there anything else in the plan that you gave us on April 10th? Like, I know that number you said you have to edit. Is there anything else that you're anticipating you would have to edit if we approve it tonight?
No, because I did make a lot of adjustments. I feel like I feel like you have a different document than I do, but I want to send you this other document, because I have a school committee document, then I have just like the document. So like, I feel like I may have written in the wrong one that I gave you.
Okay.
So to make sure that you have that updated version.
That would be great.
So I'm just going to double check what I heard. We don't have the updated version in our packets.
I feel like it was, but Teresa just gave me a different number, so that's why I'm going to go back.
Before we vote on anything, I would like confirmation.
The last one I have says that number, the 455, and that's from April 10th. I've seen like your presentation, but I haven't. So right now there's this presentation, there's a previous spreadsheet that we got, and then there's the plan, and they all say different things.
It's in the new business document from when I first presented it for new business
At April 10th?
Yeah, I looked at the location of this document, it says new business, so I know it's one of those.
The only
meetings.
thing that's linked in our agenda is this.
No, this is old business. It was in when I first presented this document.
Yeah, the SOA
April
plan that
10th.
I CJ'd from April 10th on page 15 at the bottom has that number that I read to you, the 455.
Page 15. I'm on page 13 with that number, so that's how I do know it's a different document. I'm in new business from April 10th. It's called the SC Norwood Guidance Document.
Okay, so if we don't have agreement on which document we're voting on, I'm tabling this discussion because we cannot vote on something that we're going to be held accountable for until we all have the same written document.
I will move it to this document right now, no business.
Nope, it is being tabled until the next meeting.
Okay.
Kate, elementary school update.
Great, so this will be brief. It's just, what I've linked here is there's no vote required. It's just my notes for talking to you, brief notes. We have postponed our presentation, our next presentation to, I'm trying to open this up so I can see those notes, and it's not happening. We've postponed the presentation for the reason, sorry, let me just, is somebody else in it? What's going on?
Do you want to look at my computer?
Why won't I just open it? Hold on. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
So,
the internet's being weird. I can't get into everything quickly either.
But basically, we postponed because in response to our last presentation, we got a couple of questions that we wanted to take some more time with. And they kind of prompted us to want to look at a scenario that we had talked about briefly, but we understood from the questions and ideas that the public would probably want to see more work done around that scenario. So instead of rushing, really we couldn't make that work to get that scenario work done with a consultant before this meeting, based on when we started talking about it. So we wanted to create time to be able to do that and then present them all at once, as opposed to bifurcating the process by which you guys and the public see the different scenarios. So that's basically what's happening. We're on the 5th, we're gonna bring the consultant in and show you sort of the ones we were sort of leaning toward, but also a little bit of extra homework to, to explore more ideas. And so that's what's happening there. There will be implications about the timeline. I had talked about bringing in 2 timelines for community engagement. I think after the next presentation, we can have a better conversation about what makes the most sense. But because we're going to be going into summer, we're probably looking at a delay of taking the response of the school committee and the administrative team and looking at the scenarios based on that, and then refining a little bit over the summer, and then taking that product's a weird word in education, it's not a product, but taking that to the school community in terms of families and the wider community, because public is welcome to give input, but to do that in early fall when we're back again. I just wanted to make one other correction. Thank you to Dr. Munoz's update, which is really doing a good job, I hope, of keeping people aware of just where this is at. For anyone who tuned in hoping to get that update tonight, apologies, but I've explained why the postponement exists. One thing, though, in your update that was, I just want to amend, is that I think you said the implementation will be happening in year 25-26. That's an option, but it's not guaranteed. So just,
Yeah.
I'm
What
not
I wanted to say is that it wasn't going to happen next year for sure.
Definitely not next year. The
That's what I
earliest
wanted
it
to
could be is the 25-26 school year, but that's to be decided, depending upon how this conversation goes and what the administrative team and the school committee decides. So that's it. Any questions?
I had 3. First, thank you. I want to express, because I think sort of where this came from was some feedback that we had received as a school committee via email, and I want to express my frustration, because you guys have done, I know I was sort of started on it, you guys have done such great work, and part of the job of a consultant is you look at options, as you go, you narrow down those options. And you guys had come to us with, I think, 3 pretty reasonable options. We talk about this, but going into year 4 on the school committee, it seems like NORD likes to do this, where we like to kick stuff down the road, and this is not a knock on you. I think, we get a little bit of pushback, and as we've talked about, the bottom line with our elementary schools is that as we move into the future, we're going to consolidate. That's what the MSBA asks for. Those are the models now. These are the things that are coming, like i.e. why we have a 5-3 middle school. You guys brought someone in, you brought the people to the table that matter the most and have the most knowledge of what this is going to look like on the ground. I think they've given a lot of great feedback. I think, from what you had said and what we had seen as a school committee, that this is doing the job. We talked about this being the Band-Aid, and it's just like the Band-Aid needs to be ripped off at some point. And I understand we will have that time for public comment. I think that's totally great. I would ask, and this was one of my questions, if you could bring both of those timelines to June 5th to help us with that discussion. But I just, not at you, I want to express my thanks and gratitude to that group and that committee, but sort of my frustration of, we look at this, we try to make a decision, people tell us we need a consultant, we get a consultant, they give us good options, somebody doesn't like those options, and now we just, like, it's getting crushed beneath the wheel and cycle. So that's just me expressing my frustration, but thank you.
I understand that. I feel that, and it's also tricky with a consultant because we're in a place where we have a contract with them,
Yeah.
and so we can't push it too much. And on the other hand, I find it easier to say yes than no. Generally, that's an improv tenet, if anybody cares. But in other words, David, I totally understand what you're saying, and it could be frustrating. It just so happens that this wasn't a reactive response. There was some valid points, things that we had discussed, but maybe not as thoroughly. Because we kind of prioritized in a certain way, which I think the working group has the right to do. But if it tells you that a respected member or an involved member is, looking at these things, it's going to come up later. And so you're then put in this position where it's like, well, when do we do the work? Let's do the work ahead of time. And so now, how many times can you do that? You can't do it in perpetuity. You can't do it forever. So I appreciate what you're saying, for sure. And we're trying to balance protecting the work and protecting our contract with doing it in a smart sort of way. So that's where we're
Any
at.
other questions or comments for the elementary study update?
So just to make sure I understand, so the next report with the consultants, with your whole group, is at our next meeting. At that point, you'll be talking about a lot of the things you already identified, but going into more detail about some things that at this time you've rolled out, correct? Like those options of why you're not recommending?
And we're not, yes, we'll go into some detail, and that will all be provided. We won't, in that presentation, we're not going to go into a ton of detail about things we've ruled out. We're going to talk about how, that we've talked about them, that they exist in mapping and all of these things, but if we can't take that much time in the presentation.
Oh, of course, but just to be able to identify, we have looked at these areas, because there's operational decisions, there's budgetary decisions, there's educational, what is best, right? There's all those different decisions, which I think the email we got was calling into question some of the, hey, did you look at the operational piece? And maybe your group needs just to present that you have, right?
The answer is yes, and yes, we will discuss that. But also, I think to manage expectations, this body might need to vote on an educational plan before all operational decisions are necessarily made. So that might be what drives some operational discussions when it comes to budget and when it comes. So, as it is an iterative process, the staffing conversation is going to be going on, and so we'll have even. It's all kind of sort of feeding into each other. So, and then it's an ongoing piece, and in that sense, the discussion will continue.
Yeah, and there's definitely overlap, as we've talked about, between this and the middle school staffing. So, I appreciate you taking another look and getting more information. And as I expressed at the last meeting, although I often say, hey, we're behind, I also think there's a time where you have to assess and say, how do we move forward in a way that engages all the stakeholders? And I know you're working on that as well, Kate, and I thank you for that. And I look forward to the update on June 5th.
Great. Let's see anything on next.
Okay, legislative advocacy.
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll hand it over to Kate because I know she's been doing some work as well. So since we last met on the 1st, Jody Smith and I met with Senator Rush and Representative Rogers on May 6th. At that point in time, the House budget was already voted on, and unfortunately, a lot of the amendments that were brought forth in the House to support education did not go through at the House level. So we were just hearing from Rep. Rogers, like, why did some things not move forward? Where was he on his perspective? But then really trying to encourage Senator Rush to advocate for some things for us. So the budget is at the Senate process right now. In my notes in your packet, I linked to the detailed Ways and Means budget, should you want to look at it. I also shared with you the cherry sheets. So if you look at the cherry sheets, which I had opened and now it kicked me out, give me a second.
I think things are being weird.
The internet is being weird, I agree. But you can look at the cherry sheet, and if you go to, you want to look specifically at the Norwood tab, and what you see is in this budget process, what has been proposed by the governor, what has been proposed by the House, and now what is being debated in the Senate. But it does not want to open back up. Okay, there it is. Okay, so for Norwood, right now in the Senate, our Chapter 70 estimated budget is $17,416,586. That is the same as it was in the House and slightly higher than it was in the governor's proposal. Again, our Chapter 70 is increasing, but because of inflation, the increase is not as much as it would have been in past years, which is still a frustration, and it's still something we're trying to get the House and Senate to advocate around, but it looks at as early as FY26 is when they're going to fix, if they fix, the inflation formula. Kate will talk in a moment about some amendments that were released and some advocacy ideas that we have going forward. Very frustratingly, Senator Rush did not put forth any of the amendments that Jody and I asked him to. But that is an update on the work that I have been involved in. And Kate, I'll turn it over to you.
So that very same day, I went to Day on the Hill. I wasn't able to make the call with our reps just because of childcare and getting back from the Day on the Hill. It was a good day. I'm just going to take my time to briefly sort of talk about who was there and some of the focuses. It was a great event in terms of understanding why what we do as public servants is really important, and why we should be advocating and for public education and the role that it plays in our society and how vulnerable it is right now. I'm sort of relaying this message from a few of the people, the speakers that were there, notably the chair of the Education Committee, incoming Steve Altrino, and the outgoing Denise Garlick. You know, they really wanted to hone in on, again, encouraging healthy relationships with our legislators, and some other sort of priorities. I've noted that in these notes. I think for the public, I just want, again, to convey, hit it a little bit harder, that our voice is really important. Student voice is really important. Since our budget hearing, we've had parents reach out to us about wanting to be more involved. We've said to them, please be advocates, please organize around change so that education funding can be reformed to the extent that we don't have mandates that we can't pay for, and then we can't serve our students. So the more awareness building we can do around that, the better. I can share out a few amendments that Teresa referenced to the group of parents that was here. I'm happy to share that out so that they can reach out to, especially Senator Rush, before May 20th. I don't know if you just said this, but the debate starts, for Senate debate starts on the 20th. So we have until then to reach out and say, here are the amendments that would help us. Please write to them and say, will you please support this? So I'm gonna go ahead and email that out to the parents that I've been talking to. I'm thinking we could pretty easily create a page under the school committee tab on the website that is an advocacy tab that has some of this information. I don't know if that's a larger discussion. I don't know if that's something we want to try and get to happen before the 20th.
there was a lot of speakers. I took notes on what they were saying. Most of them around the amendments that were discussed here, or that we can still advocate for. So it's around Chapter 70, making a task force to reform the Chapter 70 to where it's working and where it's not, what we see happening with the SOA and like why our Chapter 70 isn't lining up. That's happening in a lot of districts. Like the SOA is helping some districts more than others. It's a super complicated formula that's like needs to be sort of taking a look at. So there's a bill to have a task force to do so. Same thing goes with the inflation formula, which was not going to be fixed by this year, by 25, but they are going to aim, there's an amendment to aim to fix it for the next year, hugely important. And then there's some transportation and like sped reserve amendments that could be helpful to us. So I've listed that out. I know we're short on time. I won't go too much into it. Do you guys have any specific questions about what happened that day?
No, but thank you for going.
Yeah, thank you for going.
And next year, I would like to try and take students. I think now that I know what to expect and like what it's like and how they utilize students, I think it would be a great experience. A few boards did have a group there, and if like 2 of us could go and take some students, that would be great. And they had set up appointments way in advance and with their reps. So I wasn't able to get a response from one, and it was sort of short notice for the other. So I think it could be a great experience for students too.
And Kate and I have been talking with Dr. Galligan through the Student Advisory Council about possibly getting students to go to the MASC/MASS conference in November. The Saturday is always a student session. And then also at the state level, DESE has like a state level of Student Advisory Council that as a district you can sign your students up to be a part of. We missed the deadline, but we think for next year we might want to look at that as well, because as all of you know, our SAC has identified they want to be more involved in our advocacy efforts. So Kate and I are trying to figure out ways.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll offer a template of sort of like talking points, but it's really important that if you're reaching out, you personalize this in some kind of way. You know, you say, you know, why it's important, how funding impacts, you know, your family in particular, but personalizing it is helpful with our legislature.
Is there anything else with advocacy for this evening, David?
I dumped a letter into that folder, so I'm just gonna ask that you take a look, I guess, offline on your own time, add notes. It's pretty strongly worded. I feel very strongly about, well, I'm right and I feel strongly about it. So if you would do that, mark it up, please, and then I would love to vote to approve it. I mean, I don't think action is going to be taken on this H597, but I think a lot of the conversation that we've had around many different things, issues in schools, we heard 5 elementary principals, 4 elementary principals, plus a middle school principal talk about behavioral issues and support and need for that, and, you know, tying into the funding piece. It's not just sound policy and making sound policy in an open and transparent way, which the state legislature has not done the past couple of years, specifically with Chapter 222, but also then giving us the resources to be able to do those things. So, okay, if you're gonna tell us we can't do this, give us money to get the supports in the buildings for these people, so.
Thank you for doing this, and I know you directly touch it in your job every day. After a first skim through, I wish there was a way we could get our Norwood admin team, like, a response of how it impacts them daily. Like, what lacks around this bill and around this law is data at this point, because when I brought it up at the Lunch and Learn or whatever it was, nobody could say to me, like, you know, or like if schools that are more resourced, like what are they doing to support teachers, or how's it working for people? And if it's not, how is it not working? Like,
well,
how is it?
It's
what
not
is the
working
ripple
because
effect?
it's going to disproportionately affect schools that have, generally speaking, higher levels of socioeconomic and racial diversity. Brockton is the clear example. There were state reps that held an open forum a couple of months ago, and none of them refused to own the correlation between we're going to get rid of the ability to, suspend and expel. Like the purpose of the law was to prevent us from expelling, full stop. But you look at, and I would suggest, I don't know if I sent to you guys or not, but the Brockton Enterprise and then finally the Globe did a couple of really nice sort of just informational pieces on what was going on at Brockton, and I'm paraphrasing, but the interim principal talked about, you know, we have 200 kids that take up all of our time and our hands are tied. And I think as you move out from a school like Brockton that is very large, that you see trends, it's one of the largest schools east of the Mississippi, public, you see it sort of trickle down into those districts. And where it ties your hands is sometimes the consequence needs to match the
Right.
level of the behavior.
And you touched on it here, but I'd like to bring it out more in terms of like the intent versus the resource not following up to execute on like restorative aspects of it, right?
Yeah. Like saying you do this, but we're not gonna give you any money for someone that
Right. That
trains this.
would
or-
actually help.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to hone in on. I'll make that note.
Could I just give 2 pieces of guidance as we move forward with this, Joan?
Yes.
So David, thank you so much for working on this. I agree with Kate, like, we could run it through JJ and the admin team and maybe
Yeah.
just get some examples of Norwood, right? Like, because Kate was saying, if we can personalize something, let's do it. And then also, you acknowledge this here, but this was like embedded in that mental health bill. And I actually am fully supportive of the mental health bill.
Oh, totally,
So
yeah,
I just want to
that's-
make sure we're like not rejecting the bill. It's just how, and we talked about this before
Yeah.
last year, right? Like how this came about and this was hidden in the bill. So yes, we support the mental health bill. Yes, we support the intent. We need more funding, and then everything else you said. That would just be my guidance as I take a quick look.
You
at
guys are a lot nicer than me, and I will tell you that this is 3 versions of mine that you will not see. So,
So David has asked for everybody to mark up and provide written comments. The committee's asked you to see if you can personalize it, among other things. So we'll table. There's no vote this evening.
correct, no, I just wanted
So-
to make sure you saw it.
No, just so if he can get through JJ, through Dr. Mina's,
Yep.
work with the admin team. And then just because we've been working with the union, see if Ms. Smith has suggestions from her perspective as well. She's shaking her head yes, so.
One of my comments is just gonna say, you catch more flies with honey. Get ready, that's what's gonna say.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
We're
John.
gonna move on from giving David life advice, catching more flies with honey.
Thank you,
That
David,
has
for your
nothing
work
to
on
do
that.
with the letter that he wrote.
Well, it does, actually.
Somebody has to be a curmudgeon.
That's fine, but we're gonna move on from that and go to the policy subcommittee update.
Oh, I have nothing, honestly.
Great.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
I mean, there's 3 coming for June 5th that are kind of, should be
Straightforward vote.
stamp, post,
Great.
because we're already kind of doing them.
Great.
Other than that, JJ's starting a conversation on the 22nd with the admin team about, in terms of social media, what is in practice, so we can then match that up to what the MASC is recommending. That's it.
We got like a movie trailer of policy of policy to come.
There
Okay.
you go. In a world.
Great. Dr. Munoz, the last day for the LMPA.
Yeah, so there was a memo that's obviously linked to the agenda that you guys can read. So, Ms. Noonan, the principal of the LMPA, is requesting that the last day of school for the LMPA pre-K program would be the Friday before, June, right now, the current day of last school is June 21st. They proposed that it would be June 19th would be their last day, which was given 3.5 extra days to complete essential tasks such as writing IEPs, preparing for ESY summer school, and then just obviously taking care of their classrooms. There is, I know I talked with Ms. Stewart earlier, and I do have 3 dates from the past 3 years of where they have gotten out, except for I don't have calendars, so I don't know how early that was.
Okay.
But I do know the dates are there, because I did try to pull up last year's calendar, but I'm like, I don't know what the snow days were, because it's a PDF
Tell
calendar.
us the dates, I can tell you what we ended.
Last year was June 16th for LMPA,
We were right around like the 20th last year, where we
and
got
the year
out.
before that was June 21st,
So that was pretty close to our end of year.
and the year before that was June 15th.
Okay, so anywhere from like a week to a couple days is
Yeah.
the pattern.
Yeah, so with this, and I know that they are looking at doing some safety care training for their staff, because all their staff needs to be safety care trained. Ms. Noonan said they have not scheduled those dates yet, because it was dependent on your guys' vote to make sure that they don't want to schedule those training dates. It would have been a 2-day training, if you guys were gonna say the snow. But this is something that I was told, that is happening every year in LMPA. And I'm learning about this just like you guys are, because I know Joe's looking at me right now,
Oh,
but
laughing.
like, so she's obviously bringing this forward. I told her to write a memo. She wrote a memo. It's a nice written memo of all things you have to do. And I said, what's the difference between this and maybe a different type of school? And she said, well, because they have the different rotations of kids that come out, a teacher can literally have 45 kids come through their class in that week. And so, because they have the Monday-Tuesday or the Monday-Wednesday program, and Tuesday-Thursday program, the full
Right.
day, the half day. So there's just a lot of different components. And then they're all special education teachers, so they're all in charge of writing IEP updates and making
Yeah.
sure they're really well thought out plans as they move on to kindergarten.
What are the parents expecting at this point?
The parents are actually the ones who reached out and wanted her to give a date, because this is something
Right.
that is apparently
So
normal
confused.
for LMPA.
This came from this really came up because I got an email from a parent.
Because they're trying to
and
plan.
asked like, hey, when's our last day? And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've never.
Yeah, so this, the parents are waiting
Hang on.
with bated breath to find out
Okay.
like when their last day is.
Move to approve June 14th as the end date for LMPA, per the memo.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you again, Dr. Munoz, for working on this. How it was done in the past is not how it was supposed to be done. We're all trying to rectify a number of things moving forward. The reason this has come forth to the school committee is because the school committee is supposed to vote on anything related to a school calendar. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. And thank you to Ms. Noonan for her very detailed memo. I appreciate having that information.
The only question I have is, do you guys want me to bring a date in June for next year?
That was going to be another question I had.
Yes. The answer is yes. At least I want to.
So we can put it on the calendar.
So,
now.
so that the calendar is approved all at the same time.
Yep.
My question are there contractual issues around this, or have
No, it's
you
still the
already
teacher
talked
work
about
day.
that?
It's still the teacher work day. They're gonna still work their full day.
You ran this by Jody? That's really what my question is.
I had not ran this by Ms. Smith, but
Are there
the
contractual issues here?
Well, no, the LMPA every year, a couple days, gets out a couple days early. The kids stop coming a couple days early, so the teachers can do their work.
I need time to talk to the building rep from that program.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I don't recall this. It could very well be, but I'm not positive, so I need time to speak with my building rep in that area.
Yeah, that's why I have the 3 dates that this is
Yeah.
consistently happening, so.
Yeah, which is why I asked you for the data, and I think, I know there's the motion on the table, I think we still approve it because families are
Yes.
asking, and then I think we work with our union and our team here to rectify things going forward.
Yeah.
Well, is this year contingent on Jody's
No, I'm
conversation,
saying
though?
we vote on that, but then there's a forward-facing conversation we probably need to have and make sure we're all on the same page, but because families are asking, and because we don't meet again until June 5th,
Yeah.
I think we have to vote on it.
Yes.
Teresa's just basically publicly stating we're gonna work with the union if there are issues moving forward.
But I'm just wondering
Jody's-
if that conversation impacts at all what would happen this year.
I think just with the timeline,
We don't have a choice.
It can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion? We're grateful for our good working relationship with our union leadership. Anne Marie.
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that passes 5-0. Thank you, Dr. Munoz, for bringing that to our attention. And again, this has not been something that has come to us in the past. Okay, we are on to consent agenda. That is you, Dr. Munoz.
Donations.
Donations, yep.
Coakley, Oldham, Willett, the high school, and the Callahan, all are receiving from the Women's Community Committee $500 to use for the end of the year. It says they are pleased to extend this gift to each of the schools of Norwood. They are hoping that these funds will help students as schools start to wind down for another year of learning, and they are very fortunate to have such a wonderful, dedicated group of professionals.
Wow. Wonderful.
Move to approve. That's so nice.
Do you want to do the other ones too?
I
Or?
can do the other ones too. Yeah, there's a bunch.
Apologies.
I'm gonna butcher this name a little bit. The Ohipoli Prince Inc.
Ohio Pile?
Ohio Pile.
Ohio Pile. Ohio Pile.
I like your
Oh,
pronunciation.
yeah. I was actually trying to do okay. Ohio Pile. There you go.
This is where you need like the denotation of like long vowel and short vowel.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and it's for $3.06, y'all.
Wow.
So they're donating
Thank you.
$3.06.
Thank you.
It's a high school
you.
rebate that's going to the high school. That's another donation. And then we have Bay State Textiles, which obviously comes in all the time. They're donating $600. It's going to be a $656.40 donation, and obviously it's allocated between all the different schools. And then our last one is the Prescott's actually in that same $500 gift card as from the Women's Community Committee.
Move to approve all those donations.
Second.
Okay, David, motion, Teresa seconded. Is there any discussion?
No, thank you.
Just want to say thank you very much to the Women's Community Committee. And Anne Marie?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yep.
Kate?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that passes 5-0. We are now at the portion of the program for school committee addenda. Anne Marie, you are first.
I see David pointing at me. I just want to say thank you, Joan, for stepping in yet again, being a wonderful chair for the meeting while I am away for work. But that is all. Thank you very much.
Teresa?
Two brief things. One, I know I say this often, but I just always remember what Dorothy Presser from MASC told us, and that every school committee meeting is a story. What is the story you're telling? And I hope tonight people realize we told a really positive story. And I always like May when we get to hear directly from our principals and we hear our school improvement plans and we can celebrate the work that's been done. And we can also talk about the work that we intend to do, because there's a lot of really good people and a lot of really good work that happens in Norwood, and I'm proud of that. And also, it would not be possible without our budget. So I know I'm annoying and I bring everything back to budget, but that is something within my purview and my authority. Yes, Matt. But that is something within my authority and my purview, and where I can make sure that all these amazing things our staff is telling us we need and our students deserve, we can do. Because that is the link. And as I look at all the updates and improvement plans, like my mind immediately goes to previous presentations or budget decisions that we've made. And had we made a different decision, there would be a very different outcome. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then very briefly, I just want to share something that we should all be proud of. So Ryan Quigley, who is the chair of the School Health Council, he had shared with me earlier in the week that our district is being recognized. So as many of you know, right before the pandemic hit, we joined like a pilot coaching program through DESE, and we had like a coach who came in, Linnea Spencer was her name, and she worked with us on our school health council and our wellness policy. And years ago, when Joan and I were on the wellness policy, we worked really hard at revamping that wellness policy, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback over the years from DESE on that policy. But now, due to the work of the school committee, the policy, and the School Health Council, we are being recognized as the Massachusetts School Wellness Champion next week, May 21st, at the Institute of Food and Nutrition's 2024 Healthy Kids, Healthy Programs Summit. And the current members of the School Health Council who were part of the School Health Council when we did this work was myself, Ryan Quigley, Amy Worcester, and Eli Norris. So again, connecting the dots, budget matters, policy matters, and when we do the hard work in those two areas, amazing things happen.
Kate.
Okay, I was just making a little bit of a note. I'll try not to go on too long. One of the things that we talked about on Day on the Hill that really came through is a focus for a lot of organizations right now is the educator crisis, the lack of pipeline for the professionals that do this work. If we make a connection to where we're at as a sort of culture and society, you could probably draw some lines there in terms of how hard COVID was and in terms of the challenges that so many of our educators are facing, all of our educators. To Teresa's point and to what our principals brought to light here tonight, I think it is so important that we as a Norwood community uplift our teachers and focus on the good that is being done, because there's so much good being done. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that the challenges aren't there and that our students aren't being challenged. But if we don't champion our teachers and if we don't champion our schools, our public education system as a public good that makes this a society worth living in, then we can't get the teachers to come in and go to school to be educators and then continue with this important thing. So before I ramble on too much, I just will say thank you to everyone, both on this board for your service and our teachers and educators and administrators for the hard work and for caring and not giving up. And let's keep that tide going with how we care about and talk about our public school systems.
That's it, thanks.
David?
Nothing.
David has no addenda. My addenda is, I want to thank everybody who is taking part in our education system. I know we are at the middle of May, so the countdown to the end of the year has already begun in some young children's minds. I don't know about teachers, but in some young children's minds, the countdown has already begun. And I just want to say,
Starts after April break.
just want to say, thank you everybody who is continuing to work, especially as we continue to go through MCAS and those types of things. And I want to thank everybody for dealing. We all have our quirks. Mine tend to come out when I'm sitting in the chair seat, and so thank you all for you know, continuing to work together so that we can make this as best a situation as possible. I know that we are staring down the barrel of hard decisions. And for those, Teresa and I were on the board when we had to vote to close the Willet, and I think there's some PTSD in me around that. I don't ever want to be in that situation again. And so I'm just going to keep saying that our priorities as a town are shown by what we spend our money on, what we spend our time and our money on. And we talk a lot about what's best for Norwood, and we talk a lot about the type of town that Norwood was and what Norwood is, and we have to think about what we want Norwood to be in the future and how we're going to spend our money to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of my addendum. And now I get to poll. We have to go into executive session, and I'm forgetting the exact term. The only reason we'll come back into public session is for reason for adjournment. I do have to poll to go into. I need a
motion to adjourn.
Don't I need a motion for executive session first?
Motion to go into executive session.
Thank you, David. David motions to go into executive session.
I'll second.
It's Teresa seconds.
Oh,
I have to
third.
poll individually. I just assumed the motion was made and seconded. This is a dangerous assumption. Anne Marie,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that passes 5-0. We will go into executive session. I'm supposed to say why we're going into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiations for unions and non-union personnel. So it's a double header tonight. Thank you all. We will come back just for the purposes of adjournment.